Manga magazines are an often overlooked aspect of manga discourse online, but arguably have a bigger role in determining what is available to us as readers than I think a lot of us realize. So today I'm joined here with Manga Crash to rank over 50 of the biggest and most important manga magazines, period. But there's a caveat. When I say the ultimate manga magazine tier list, I really mean the ultimate shonen and seinen magazine tier list. I'd be overstepping my area of expertise if I tried to talk about a shoujo magazine.
Yeah, the shoujo, I don't think we could do. I think there were going to be like 2 or 3 magazines in here. It's either just do like seinen and shonen, because that's mostly what we do read.
And we had discussed this previously between the two of us, but shoujo has a really long, robust history. One that's actually more robust and long than shonens, or even seinens especially, right? And I feel like if we were to even attempt at including that in here, it would be half-hearted, it would be, a patchy history, and we just wouldn't do it justice. So we'll leave that to the respective authorities on josei and shoujo, and we'll start with some good old shonen and seinen. Basically, we're ranking these manga largely based on the manga they serialized and how much we love those manga, but we're also going to try and factor in things like historical significance or any completed and ongoing series that are kind of iconic that we might not have personally read but respect. It's kind of a balance between this super personal taste and this kind of more universal appeal. So the way I've organized these manga is largely by publisher. So we have a couple magazines from SHUEISHA, a couple from KODANSHA, a couple from SHOGAKUKAN, some from Gangan Comics, Akita Shoten, and, maybe 15 miscellaneous others. So we are going to start with SHUEISHA, which is probably today the most popular publisher, and if not the most popular publisher, home of the most popular magazine, Weekly Shonen Jump. I think it's difficult to really appreciate it now, but Shonen Jump didn't actually start until 1968, and I say until 1968 because at that point there were 2 other much bigger shonen magazines that had been running for almost a decade, right? So that's KODANSHA's Weekly Shonen magazine, which we'll talk about later, and Shogakukan's Weekly Shounen Sunday, which started in 1959. So it's difficult to see now, but historically, Shonen Jump was kind of the underdog, and it really wasn't even until, the 70s and really the 80s that it became the staple in the industry that it is known as today. So with that said, I'm not going to sit here and lecture you on the hundreds of Shonen Jump manga that, we know of and we've read and are complete and are ongoing. It's the most popular magazine for a reason, right? Home with the big 3. I said I wasn't going to do this, but big 3, Dragon Ball, Fist of the North Star, Rurouni Kenshin,
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh fuck, how did I forget Yu-Gi-Oh?
I think the thing about Shonen Jump is there's so many weird stuff out there that you don't even know it's Jump. Like, my favorite tidbit is Barefoot Gen, the World War II anime movie. It's actually based on the Shonen Jump manga, Barefoot Gen. Which is not what people think as a Shonen Jump manga at all.
That's the thing. I think people forget that. Battle Shonen was always a staple of the Weekly Shonen Jump lineup, but again, if you just go through their various lineups throughout the years, they weren't just Battle Shonen ever, right? They had a huge sports, demographic, a lot of baseball manga. They had a lot of miscellaneous dramas or slice of lives and romances, right? It's not all Battle Shonen, even though those are the ones we tend to think about today.
Yeah, I think the only place where you could kinda argue maybe that it was mostly Battle Shonens was right after Fist of the North Star, because that was the one manga that really made them popular, the first manga that really made them have a chance against the other 2. And what they did, and you can kind of see this for example with Dragon Ball, is that they shifted a lot of manga, even to some gag mangas. They had some sports manga. They shifted into more of a Fist of a North Star manga. First of all, it happened was Dragon Ball, because Toriyama did a gag manga before Dragon Balls, and then he moved into a more of action one, and then he moved Kigoku to adult Goku. And that was mostly, I think, because of Fist of the North Star. But other than that, yeah, there's a really varied history in Jump. Especially like gag and sports, like you said.
Yeah, gag is the other one that I really forget. And that's because I don't read a lot of gag manga. I feel that a lot of it's like Japanese humor, a lot of it's kind of like Japanese wordplay, which, you know, doesn't translate very well at all, if at all, I mean. So I just tend to avoid. It's also just not what I like reading. Like, I don't find comedy in general translates well through a written medium.
Yeah, it really depends. I think there's people like Ryuhei Tamura, which is from Shonen Jump. Well, technically he's not in Jump anymore, but Beelzebub and these other stuff he wrote, I think do translate well into comedy because he knows how to put the panels almost the same way like Junji Ito does for horror. He knows how to do with comedy, where he can place panels perfectly so you can turn the page for the punchline and kind of be funny.
Okay.
But it's hard. I think it's harder for comedy to come across in a written medium, especially in a, like manga, than it is, you know, an anime.
So I guess that means I just need to read more good gag manga, is what you're saying.
Yes, you should read Beelzebub if you haven't.
Yeah, I think I'd like it. I'm kind of entering I'm nostalgic about 2000s, you know, Shonen Jump manga phase right now. I just, when it comes to actually like picking it up and reading it, that's a different story. Like I hate to overgeneralize, but there's just something about the way a lot of weekly Shonen Jump manga are written that is taxing for me to try and binge personally. So it's like I can get all this energy and excitement towards reading something, and then when it's time to actually read, I'm like, oh my god, what a fucking drag.
Shonen Jump specifically, we know that they have like this motto of effort, friendship, victory.
Right.
So they kind of, the language that they like their manga go, I think always at least focus a little bit on that. The way that they talk, the way that they act, kind of always focus on those aspects of like, we're all friends, we're all nice, we're gonna do the talk no jutsu kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't necessarily mind the talk no jutsu stuff so much, but maybe sometimes it just feels like they can only go so far to tell their story without, you know, crossing a boundary of one of those three principles, if that makes sense. And I think I subtly pick up on that, and maybe it just irritates me because I'm, you know, an old edgelord who just wants sex and violence every chapter, apparently. Like, I'm finding out as I'm discussing Shonen Jump, but I
mean, I feel you.
Listen, at the end of the day, I think what I'm failing to express is that this is a magazine for young boys, you know, 18 under, and, you know, I'm a 26-year-old man. So if it doesn't appeal to me, like, you don't need an essay to explain that. I mean, it's not made for me. Obviously, I love a lot from it. I mean, in my top 100, I'm sure there's a dozen, if not more, weekly Shonen Jump titles. I mean, my top two, Naruto, Yu-Gi-Oh!, weekly Shonen Jump.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the Shonen Jump channel in a way. I've unconsciously made that so you can tell that I love. I was just checking, and I have read at least 133 Shonen Jump, like weekly Shonen Jump manga. That's I cannot not put this one on S myself. Even though I think there's only been 2 manga out of those over 100 that I actually rated a 10 out of 10, being One Piece and Chainsaw Man. So,
anyways, weekly Shonen Jump's out of the way. But let's talk about its little brother, its little sister, monthly Shonen Jump. A lot of people don't know about monthly Shonen Jump, but it was essentially just a kind of spin-off of weekly Shonen Jump that, as you might guess, ran monthly. And it started in 1970 and went all the way till 2007. It didn't have the most robust catalog of titles. I know for myself, I've read Rosario Vampire, Claymore, and Tagami Bachi from it. you might say slightly more mature Weekly Shonen Jump-esque manga, but we're not quite at the level of some of the other shonen magazines we might get to eventually. And I don't really know what to think of this magazine. Like, maybe this was just a breeding ground for up-and-coming mangaka. But
personally, I don't actually read anything from... Well, I read Claymore, which started in monthly, but then moved into the magazine we're going to be talking next. And I think you said it right. I don't think the monthly, especially compared to its technical sequel, was that good. At least in the West, we haven't gotten really a lot of monthly of Shonen Jump manga get any notoriety. I know that we had Rosario plus Vampire and Claymore, and I think there was Angel Tentetsu, which was by the mangaka of Claymore.
Okay.
Before they started Claymore. And I think that's mostly what they had. And again, two of those moved into the sequel magazine. I think they got more popular through the other magazine. And the other one is, I think, popular because it's the manga by the mangaka of Claymore, just by association.
Yeah. Though I think early on Monthly Shonen Jump did have some kind of important manga. So I know it had Cyborg 009 by Ashinomori. So that's obviously a pretty important manga historically. So with all that said, it had a small library. It didn't have a particularly impactful library. I think the question is simply, do we think it passes or fails? And I'll let you answer that.
I mean, you're letting the guy who hasn't read anything from it answer it.
Well, this is actually, that makes you a more unbiased observer. I've given you the facts, right?
Yeah. I mean, Claymore is really, really good. That said, I think Monthly was cancelled for a reason. And I think I want to put it on especially because SQ, the magazine we're going to be talking next, is just, in my opinion, just so much better.
Yep.
Even though it was essentially doing the same.
And I guess we'll start with that. So Monthly Jump Square was literally just Monthly Shonen Jump rebranded, and I don't know what they did differently. Surely they must have changed editor-in-chief or something. They must have had a different approach, but this was a banger of a magazine, and it still is. So I know for me, again, it has obviously Claymore, which is something we both just talked about. Genkaku Picasso, one of Furuya's rare shonen magazines. It also had the reissue, or the latest, or the last chapters of Shaman King, right? The Kanzenban version.
Yeah, the Kanzenban edition. So it's not real. Technically the last chapter is the rewritten ending, the new ending.
Yeah, right. So the last, I don't know, 30 chapters, is it? Something like that.
Yeah, I think so. It's more than one volume.
Yes, yeah.
I read I started the Showa Shoden, which is a currently ongoing manga by Obata and someone else. I don't actually know who the other guy is, but it's really good. I've read 10 chapters. It's Obata. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Bakuman.
That's actually what I was going to say. When I initially read it, I'd probably dropped it after, 5 chapters. It just felt like Bakuman for comedy, and
yeah,
I don't like Bakuman, so I don't like this.
How dare you?
I know. That aside, it does actually have some pretty significant ongoing manga. I know Blue Exorcist is currently being published in it. Prince of Tennis 2 is being published in it. The latest Rurouni Kenshin arc, though that is on hiatus now, I believe, because of Watsuki's health. So, but it seems to kind of have sequels or final arcs of some legendary Shonen Jump series, along with some pretty cool young guns. World Trigger is another good example of that. So it's really the philosophy of monthly Shonen Jump, but actually done well, I guess.
Yeah. About World Trigger, so that was, and you can see kind of this in, I think, more titles in Jump SQ, if I'm not wrong. Jump SQ has also kind of been the home of mangaka that started in Shonen Jump but had like health problems and then moved to Jump SQ, so that's World Trigger.
Oh.
And then D. Grayman, which is not on the magazine we're going to be talking here, but it is on a Jump SQ spin-off.
Rise, I believe.
Yeah, which is also like the mangaka got sick, and then it moved into not even to Jump SQ because they can all like write 3 chapters or 4 chapters a year.
And I think that one publishes quarterly, right? I think it's every 3 months or so.
Yeah.
I think there's Jump SQ Lab, SQ Crown, so there's a lot of like these little spin-offs that I didn't really factor into this entry, but I think it would be fair to include those in our assessment. So it's definitely better than Monthly Shonen Jump. I'm feeling maybe a C on this one. It's definitely better, but it's, in the scope of everything we're going to look at, it's still not a phenomenal magazine.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
So now we're going to be talking about Monthly V-Jump. Sorry, Crash, I don't think you've read anything from this, have you?
No, I know what it is.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I only know like 2 manga from it, which is Dragon Ball Super and Boruto.
That's about the scope of its notoriety, I guess. I mean, it started in the 90s. It started in the 90s specifically, and it was essentially, manga that adapted a video game or an anime, right? So, there's a bunch of Dragon Quest manga in here. There's, very notably for my channel, a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh mangas in here.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about V-Jump was, or not really cool thing, but the main point of V-Jump wasn't even the manga themselves. Was it just like video game reviews and guides, and it was just like a gaming magazine that you'd buy, but had also manga in it and Yu-Gi-Oh cards as well.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point, and that's something we're obviously gonna miss a lot of when we talk about magazines today. I can't read Japanese. Most of these are really only published in Japanese, and so you miss a lot of like the core elements that make it a magazine. The different reviews and opinion columns and advertisements, things like that contribute to a unified aesthetic. We're missing a lot of that, unfortunately, and where possible, we'll try and account for it. But I think this is, as you mentioned, a really good example of one where the whole is bigger than the sums. It's, what manga does it run? Boruto, Dragon Ball Super, a couple Yu-Gi-Oh manga, right? Nothing groundbreaking, nothing really particularly amazing either, to be honest. But it's a fucking magazine for gamers, damn it.
You're not a gamer though. I'm the gamer.
Yeah. Don't ask him what his peak in League of Legends is.
I haven't played League of Legends in years.
Yeah, that's about to change when the V-Jump League of Legends crossover happens.
Yeah, I do want. There's been like some V-Jump issues that I wanted to buy because they had the new cards from like the One Piece trading card game.
Yep.
But it's hard to get issues from Japan, especially those, because there's a lot of people that want those.
Mm-hmm. With all that said, how do we feel about V-Jump? Again, it's so strange. I'm asking you for the manga that for the magazines where you've not read any manga.
I think just on an overall, probably a C.
Yes.
I don't know the quality of like Boruto or Super. I know what people say about them, and people don't say a lot of good things. But I haven't actually like read them.
Yeah, I haven't kept up with Boruto since the time skip, so I haven't read Twin Blue Vortex or whatever it's called. I'm kind of waiting for that to accumulate a bit, but I like the original run of Boruto. I thought it was fine. I think, however people feel about Dragon Ball Super is how people feel about Boruto, so I can kind of just infer about that. And then, like, as for the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, it's all dog shit. So it's definitely worse than Jump Square, but like you said, as a total package, like it's neat, it's cool. The game reviews, the different opinion columns, the cards, like it's a cool magazine, and that's what we're rating at the end of the day is the magazine. So moving along now, we're kind of leaving the physical medium into the digital world, and we've got Shonen Jump Plus, which launched in 2014. Wow, that's considerably later than anything we've discussed so far. It's an app, essentially. It doesn't have a lot of those kind of magazine components. So here you're really just evaluating it on the basis of what it contains, and it's got some bangers. I mean, the big ones, of course, I mean, for me, from what I've read, are, this is like Fujimoto's Playground, right? Chainsaw Man, Goodbye Eerie, Look Back, right? And then another personal favorite of mine is also on here, 3 Days of Happiness. I know we've talked about this before. You don't love it.
We have.
But, it's a pretty big manga. I really love it. So it definitely goes in my favor that it's here.
To me, not only the things that you mentioned, still in Fujimoto we have Fire Punch. That's really good. Dandadan, amazing manga. The anime is currently ongoing. I'm not caught up with it because I'm really bad at keeping up with ongoings, and I'm thinking of just like following the volume releases physically. We have Deadpool Samurai, which is really cool if you're a Deadpool fan.
Is it really?
Yes. I mean, it's fun. It's not really amazing. It's not on the same level of the others, but it's fun. I won't say it's necessarily the better than the comics version, but on the other hand, for someone like me who's like a huge Shonen Jump fan, it does have a lot of like references. We do see like All Might saving Deadpool, which is really cool.
Okay.
We also have the Promised Neverland parody, which is made by the same guy as Mia Roboko, which is cool. I think it's hidden gem in there. I think it's fun. And then like kind of big ones. I'm not sure if you read these, but we have like Spy Family. Mm-hmm. That is huge.
Yeah.
Astra Lost in Space by the same mangaka who did Sket Dance and is currently doing Witch Watch, is probably some of the best things in the magazine, and nobody really talks about Astra. And more recently we have Shibatarian, which I haven't completed, but what I've read, at least the first volume, is pretty cool.
Double Skeleton, that ran in this magazine, right?
I'm not sure. I haven't read that.
That was a really dog shit manga, and it's got me thinking, like, I'm trying to think about, like, the ratio here, because when you think about Shonen Jump, it's easy to just highlight the good ones.
I mean, I can throw you, like, some bad.
That's the thing, like, I feel like, and I have no empirical metrics for this, I initially felt like there might just be a lot more slop in Shonen Jump Plus than Weekly Shonen Jump, but the more I kind of think about, Shonen Jump Plus hasn't been going on that long. You're kind of listing off like a bunch of really like critically acclaimed titles or just really popular titles, and it's making me think that this might actually be a little tighter than Weekly Shonen Jump on the whole. No, obviously, not a fair comparison, but just a remark I wanted to make, I guess.
Yeah, we do have, like, I haven't read a lot of them, but there are also like a bunch of cancelled Jump Plus titles. The one I've read recently was Yumeushi, which, I mean, it does feel like a bit of like a Shonen Jump manga as well, where you kind of get to the middle point and it sucks, and then has a rushed ending. So, I've read a horror manga called Friend Eater Classroom, which is just trashy, horror 101. It's kind of bad. But I don't know. I think what's cool about Jump Plus is that I think it's allowed to have a little bit more variety.
Right.
And the mangaka get to have like a more of a breathable schedule. So like Dandadan doesn't need to be released every week. Chainsaw Man definitely doesn't release every week. And they're kind of like allowed to do that, a bit more than Jump.
Right.
Than Weekly Shonen Jump.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So I think with all that said, I'm feeling somewhere between like a high B and like a low A maybe.
I feel like for the impact that it had in the last 5-6 years, I would say definitely an A.
All right. I'm convinced. And so that kind of wraps up the shonen line, I guess, of SHUEISHA. Now we get into a couple of their seinen magazines, and I do literally mean a couple. We first have Weekly Young Jump. So this was their, I don't know if this was their very first seinen magazine, but it started in 1979. It's the earliest seinen magazine of SHUEISHA that I have to discuss today. And, pretty good lineup. So for me, it's got like Tokyo Ghoul. It's got manga by Hioria Oku. So Gaunt's ran in here, Hen, O1. Also, we've got some manga by Lin Okamoto, right? Elfen Lied, Grenadier of Darkness. So it's some of my personal favorite seinen magazine or manga ran in this magazine. And then just like a fucking slew of legendary ongoing titles. I mean, Kingdom's currently being published here. Real by Inoue is being published here. Oshi no Ko, Dogs Red, shout out Canada.
What was the other manga by the Dogs Red, which mangaka, which was really popular? Golden Kamuy.
Oh, Golden Kamuy.
Golden Kamuy.
Yeah.
That's a huge series. I've read like 2 volumes. Really good. Other than that, like personally, I haven't read a lot of titles from Young Jump. I've read a couple. I'm gonna say like actually I didn't enjoy most of what I read.
Wow.
From Young Jump, although the library you said is really good. I've read Gantz from that list and one, and then I just want to throw out like Innocent, which is the manga about the French Revolution. I haven't read the sequel, but it's really good.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those like cult classic manga. I feel like it just got it finally just got published here in the West, I believe. I think Viz picked it up. Mm-hmm. It's got this really gorgeous physical edition. It also has Usokui, which was like massive on Twitter a while back. Kaguya-sama, The Climber. So it's got a lot of big titles. And like I mentioned earlier, some of my personal favorites.
I think overall, when I made my own list, I was exclusively rating the manga that I've read from them. And so Young Jump didn't actually rank that high. Again, I've read some stuff, like Blue Heaven is one of the worst. Maybe worse is kind of like a disservice to some of the bad manga that I've read. But it's one of the most badly pretentious manga I've had the displeasure of reading. Elfen Lied, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Yeah, when I was like 15, I loved big boob, naked girl cutting limbs. 31-year-old Crash doesn't anymore.
Yeah, that one's like a guilty pleasure of mine. I think it's it's riddled with issues, but I enjoyed the hell out of it. Still, I don't know if I would on a reread, so I don't know if I want to reread because that would probably. I don't know if I want to put myself in a situation to dislike something, so I might just let my memory leave it on a high note, I guess.
That's kind of like the thing with me though, because I haven't reread it. I just look back at the manga, and at the time I really loved it. I remember it was the first manga of that size that I actually like binged it in one go.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of impressive.
Yeah, I spent the entire night reading it. But I don't think I cannot see myself like liking it now from what I remember from it.
Valid. So that's all I think we have to say about Weekly Young Jump. It's, Shonen Jump or SHUEISHA, better known for their shonen manga. I don't think this was a good magazine, but this isn't a massive heavy hitter that we'll see with some of the other publishers. So I don't know. I somewhere between a B and a C, I think, for me.
I mean, based on what I've personally read, I kind of would put it on C. But based on its, the amount of manga that I actually have that is successful, maybe a B.
Yeah,
but I'll let you decide.
I might just do B because I feel that it's got a bit of impact that I kind of want to acknowledge here.
Yeah.
And that brings us to, I guess, the last SHUEISHA manga and their other kind of big seinen magazine, Monthly Ultra Jump, which started in '95 And this was, interestingly, actually it originally started as a special issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, so it kind of has close roots with the regular Weekly Shonen Jump line. And I think that's most obvious with, Araki's move from Weekly Shonen Jump to Ultra Jump to publish JoJo's parts 7, 8, and 9, right? 9 currently ongoing. But in terms of other manga, I think this one's even more of a flop than Weekly Young Jump. I mean, it's got some of like Nihei's worst manga, Biomega, Abara, and then I've read maybe a couple little horror manga from it, like 13 Club or Gummania. But I mean, even when I kind of scrubbed the catalog for these more legendary picks, it had like the sequel to Battle Angel Lita and like Tengo Tenge, but it don't got bangers.
No, I think it has a really strong grip with JoJo, and there's a lot of like really big JoJo fans, and I think it can survive with that and with Alita. Even though I don't think Alita is running in it anymore, but yeah, overall, I don't think Ultra Jump has a good roster. It has one good manga that I believe it's a good manga because I've only read JoJo till part 5. So I'm just trusting you guys. But what I've read from the magazine is not good.
Yeah, it's not left a good taste in my mouth.
No.
So, I mean, it's basically JoJo's the manga magazine, and it's difficult for me to place it very high when it's kind of just got its one manga that I haven't even read.
Yeah. I would put it on D. I think that was where I put it last time.
Yeah, I think D above. I think I'll put it above Monthly Shonen Jump just because JoJo, maybe.
Just so we don't get like massive downvoted.
Yep. I'm satisfied with this ranking, I think. So that kind of wraps up Shueisha. A good publisher, it seems, but a kind of a varied publisher, we might say. They have manga magazines on the whole spectrum. All right, so I guess we're gonna move into KODANSHA now, which might surprise some of you, but this is, I'm pretty sure, the biggest manga publisher in the world. I mean, and it will become very obvious as we go through some of these magazines. They've got a lot. They've got a lot of fucking magazines, and they've got a lot of good magazines.
Yes, they do.
So, I mean, let's start with their kind of, I guess their bread and butter, we might say, the Weekly Shonen magazine, right? This was one of the original shonen magazines out there, right? Starting back in '59, and it's got a large history of important manga that, frankly, I've kind of not read a lot from. I guess the big one, of course, is Devilman, which I've read and love. But other than that, I mean, Tokyo Revengers ran here, right? Which I still kind of stand by Tokyo Revengers. It's, it mishandled its ending, but in 2024, you have to kind of expect shonen manga to have mishandled endings, like they go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, but Tokyo Revengers, I read that this year, and the ending is especially, badly handled. But I will admit that, I think people just remember the ending. Because, there's, I think, 200 chapters of, actual good stuff that people don't even talk about. And I think that's unfair to the manga.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's a case of the bad ending kind of just shifted people's, I guess, charitability towards the series, and so they look back at it more critically. So now you hear a lot of, it's repetitive, it's the same arc structure each time. So I do feel like the ending has just shifted people's charitability, but I still think that, the core of Tokyo Revengers was fucking awesome. But, thankfully, Weekly Shonen magazine isn't just Tokyo Revengers. It also had Seven Deadly Sins, right? Air Gear. Importantly for you, it had Love Hina.
Yes, one of my top 3 manga of all time. Overall, I think it had a lot of really decent rom-coms. School Rumble was pretty good. Again, was pretty good. Good Ending was pretty good. Quintuplets, I think a lot of people love the quintessential quintuplets.
Yeah, it had a lot of those big rom-coms, right? Like quintessential quintuplets, domestic girlfriend, rent-a-girlfriend, which is now still ongoing, I think. So it had a niche for sure that it did a good job at filling.
And we have to, like, if we're talking about Weekly Shonen magazine, I think we have to mention that it was the best-selling magazine. And it's still like the second best-selling magazine of all time. If Shonen Jump hadn't surpassed it, this was the one that has historically dominated the industry the longest, technically.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and even in terms of like battle shonen, this was Mashima's playground, right? I mean, we had Rave Master, Fairy Tail, and Eden Zero all ran here, right? So it has relevance, I think, in every era of manga. It has kind of legendary works being published in it from arguably a larger, maybe not a larger range than Weekly Shonen Jump, but it definitely feels, or on the face of it, that it had more variety, just because like it has a lot of really famous rom-coms and a lot of really famous battle shonen, but at the same time it also had, a silent voice, great teacher Onizuka, so it does feel a little more varied, I think, on the surface. And
it also has one of the most important manga in the interactive sports genre, if not the most important one, with Ashiro no Joe, which is honestly one of the best manga of like just overall like pre-90s to me.
Yeah, like that's right. It's got a lot of kind of iconic sports, because I'm pretty sure Hajime no Ippo's in this magazine as well, right?
Yes.
And Blue Lock, which is very beloved right now. So it's got iconic manga in a lot of genres. So you really, and I mean, in terms of ongoing titles, Blue Lock, I've already mentioned, Hajime no Ippo, Rent-a-Girlfriend, but also Gachakuta, right? Go-Go Ranger or Go-Go Loser Ranger. Like it's up there with Shonen Jump, I think, for a lot of people. If I was to just rank Weekly Shonen magazine according to what I had read, it'd be decent, right? I mean, I like Devilman, I like Tokyo Revengers, but when you really zoom out and you kind of understand the role it's played in the kind of shonen manga industry, when you look at some of its bigger titles, and when you really understand what it's doing right now, that raises my appreciation for it a lot.
So, where do you feel it?
I'm still going to let my own personal taste kind of make the final judgment, and I mean that in the sense that I'm going to put it in A, but below Shonen Jump Plus, just because like Shonen Jump Plus has more manga I just like more. Like that's kind of the bottom line.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Excellent. So moving along, in 1975 we have monthly shonen magazine. So kind of 5 years after Jump did monthly Shonen Jump, we've got KODANSHA doing monthly shonen magazine. This is, I think, much like monthly Shonen Jump, a kind of inconsequential magazine. It is still ongoing, though I looked at some of the titles and like it's just, I don't know any of these titles. Though importantly for me, this is where Beck ran, I believe.
I was going to mention that.
And Your Lie in April. So it's got two important manga to me. Noragami also ran here, but I didn't love Noragami, so I'm not gonna act as if that's a factor here.
Other than those two, I haven't read Noragami, but other than Your Lie in April and Back, which are pretty two great manga, I've read Queen Emeraldas, which it's by Leiji Matsumoto. And that is a pretty important mangaka in like the 70s. It was essentially like dominating the sci-fi. He has passed away, but I still think he's still dominating the sci-fi. Just like his presence. I mean, do you know, this is gonna sound pretty random. There's this Daft Punk video clip that is like anime. You know, the one with like blue girls.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That is Leiji Matsumoto.
Oh.
That is how big this guy is. And Queen of Emeralds, I don't think is necessarily the biggest manga from him. But it's still kind of like maybe top 3. So it's kind of relevant. But overall, I don't think monthly shonen magazine is that important. I guess. I still put it, personally, I would still put it above Monthly Shonen Jump, though.
Yeah, I think I'd even put it in C, like the bottom of C, just because
Beck.
it's got Beck in Your Lie in April. Like, so I think that's what I'm gonna do. The reason I wouldn't put it like say over V Jump is it just I think V Jump is gonna be a bit of a kind of litmus test, right? I think the kind of extra contributions that V Jump gets from its non-manga aspects really makes it a little impenetrable. So if you can kind of get past it at all, I think that's kind of an important mental mark for me. But yeah, fundamentally the same as Monthly Shonen Jump, but just happen to have better manga.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Now, they also have Monthly Magazine Special. This one is no longer in serialization. It ran from 83 to 2017. And this is just full of spin-offs. You know, it's got a bunch of fairy tale spin-offs. It's got a School Rumble spin-off. It has a rewrite of Manzinger Z called Z Manzinger. You know, it's a special magazine. And I think we can easily say, oh, it's just a special magazine. Like, why even take it seriously? Well, the fact of the matter is a lot of these magazines started as just special magazines, right? So it's worth considering, but unfortunately, in Monthly Magazine Special's case, it's just a dog shit magazine.
The only manga that I read from it was I Love You, which is actually the debut manga by the mangaka of Lavina, Ken Akamatsu.
Oh.
So I have like deep nostalgia for that manga because it was one of the first manga that I read. And I got the 3 first volumes. They're out of print. I can never get the complete collection now.
No.
But it was a fun manga, but it is also like Lavina lit, where it's essentially kind of like the same thing as Lavina, bar the fact that in Lavina he copies a lot from My Son Ikoku. In I Love You, he copies a lot from Megami-sama. And, you know, it's him experimenting with the genre before he really nailed it. So overall, it's still, like, even though it's a special manga to me, I can admit that it's not, not necessarily like something that should elevate the magazine itself, the ranking.
Right. Okay. So in light of that, for me, this is probably going to be the first fail. Sorry, guys. Someone had to be in here. You know, that's the fact of the matter.
Yeah.
Now, we get to, I'll be upfront, one of my favorite shonen magazines, Bessatsu Shonen Magazine, which is actually a pretty recent magazine, all things considered. It started in 2009, and like I said, this was kind of marketed, I guess, as you could say, as like a slightly more mature shonen magazine, and that's pretty apparent in some of the manga it's published. So the big one, of course, is Attack on Titan, but it's also published, a bunch of manga by Shuzo Oshimi, like Flowers of Evil, Happiness, Welcome Back Alice, Sweet Poolside, so some of his kind of shonen hits, right? It's also got Sankareya, which, that's kind of, I was going to say guilty pleasure, but I think maybe nostalgic pick is more appropriate. It's got Half and Half, which is this kind of psychological drama thing. So it's got a pretty great lineup.
As God's Will, the first part also ran in here, which was kind of cool. And then Dai Dai wa Hantome ni Nindo ne Suro also ran here. It's by Yoichi Habe, which is a mangaka that if you do not know, you are gonna love. Is like this weird, like super like surreal mangaka that mostly does like one shot kind of stuff, and this one is what that is. It's got like a bunch of one shot stories, like very surreal, in like all of them located in one town, so all the stories like start to converge in the later half of the manga. Like just an example, I'm only selling like the manga for you in particular because I know you're gonna love it.
I was gonna say, like, I think this is a recommendation for me personally because I'm not sure that this has the broad appeal that I think it does.
No, this is one is for you. First chapter, like this girl decapitates another girl, like her best friend, and then like she runs away with her head, but the head is still alive. they had just like talking to her, and so they just like go and have a life, like, you know, just slice of life moments.
Oh, okay. I fuck with that actually.
Yeah, it's really fun.
You're a pretty good recommender. Wow, that's a word. You're a pretty good recommender of things I like. So, but yeah, UQ holder, Tomodachi game. I think there's some other kind of bigger name titles in this magazine. But I mean, honestly, if it just had Attack on Titan and Flowers of Evil alone, like those are both in my top 10. For me, this is like somewhere between A and an S. I almost don't want to give it the S because I'm trying to treat that tier with like a lot of respect. You know, manga with a lot of favorites, but also like a lot of historical relevance or importance, I might say. So, I mean, I'm feeling maybe like a strong A on this one.
Yeah, I can go with an A. For me, I don't have like that big of a connection with the magazine, although there is a lot of like manga I've really enjoyed.
Cool. Moving along, we are once again kind of transcending into the digital medium here for Magazine Pocket, which is KODANSHA's one of KODANSHA's shonen magazine apps, starting in 2015. And you know, I'll be honest, I haven't read anything from this. I know it's got Nagatoro in it. I think the current fairy tale manga is ongoing in this, but
the thing is, the stuff that I read from this one, I would definitely put it on F. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Oh, okay.
So the things that I read from it, first of all, the best thing I read from it was Spider-Man Fake Red, which is kind of it's this fun like Spider-Man manga that got cancelled. So it also has like kind of like this rushed kind of sucky ending. And then we have As God's Will 0, which is like this really short spin-off manga to read after you finish the part 1 and part 2, which really doesn't add anything to the manga. It doesn't feel like it needs to exist. And then there's Gall Cleaning. Now, if you know what Gall Cleaning is, if you read that manga, you know that it's kind of like considered one of the worst stuff ever put into manga. I'm not sure, like, you haven't read it, right, Doofy?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I can actually tell you how it ends, not because of spoilers, but because of something like we're on YouTube.
Oh. Okay.
It's weird. It's bad. Like, what happened, from what I know, is like the manga was actually like kind of just normal rom-com. Guy meets a girl. I think like the girl's like this, Gall. You know what girls are in a manga? You know, they have like tanned.
Oh yeah.
So he meets one of those. I don't remember if he is the one that is obsessed with cleaning, but I think she's the one that is obsessed with cleaning. And so like the first volume or something of the manga is just like them just, hanging out. She cleans the room. It's classic rom-com. And then the manga gets cancelled, and the mangaka has like this mental breakdown and shifts the story into like hentai because he couldn't do that, but really weird ending. We'll just say that.
Okay. You've kind of incidentally sold me on whatever the fuck this thing is.
Yes.
But okay. I don't get the impression you're very high on this magazine.
No, like again, this would be, in my opinion, kind of like an F as well, because like the best thing I've read from it is a cancelled manga, and the rest like a spin-off that I don't think should exist, and a manga that definitely shouldn't. So I don't know. I'll let you decide.
Yeah, like I said, it has Nagatoro, which I've seen the first season of the anime, and that was, that was okay. It definitely is not something where I'm the target demographic. And I think the only other like notable ongoing series is Jujika no Rokunin, and I think people like that, which is good, but I'm not people, so I think I'm kind of inclined to just give this an F. And the question is it better or worse than that special magazine? I'm going to say better, only because
Nagatoro.
Nagatoro, this fairy tale sequel, and that Jujika manga seem to be like fine enough. But to quote big justice, this one's gonna have to be a doom. Sorry, old man trying to connect with kids, I guess. Moment.
Dead ass.
Okay. So now we get to, I think, some of the best stuff on this list. Starting off with Kodansha's one-day line, right? They got the morning, the afternoon, and the evening mangas. So we can start with Weekly Morning, which started in 1982, and, you know, Vagabond is kind of one manga you might have heard of that kind of runs in this. You might have heard of Gon, not to be confused with the Hunter x Hunter character. I'm talking about this little dinosaur. Full of dialogue, though, so it's not for those who don't like reading.
Yeah.
But that's really it for me. I know, like, it's got some pretty big legendary titles. It's got Billy Bat, which I know you love. It's got Planets, right? It ran Planets before Yukimoto, I think is his name, would later go on through Vinland Saga. I think Planets was his first manga, right? Mm-hmm. Or his first big manga, rather.
I know it came before Vinland Saga. I don't know if it was his actual first. Might be, right. Might have been. Yeah, there's like stuff that I like in here. Eternal Sabbath, kind of like this monster vibey feel. There's Wendy from Jiro Matsumoto, which is a manga that I really enjoy. But overall, I would say that for me, I think like in general, morning does not have the same like kind of like impact that you know, afternoon at least has.
And I would agree with that. I think historically, morning was kind of pushed as the main seinen magazine, and afternoon was kind of like, you know, if you weren't good enough for morning, you'd go to afternoon. But looking back now, I think it's pretty clear that afternoon became their massive success. I mean, we'll talk about it in a moment, but afternoon is home to like the biggest, like most critically acclaimed seinen. So let's cut this discussion of Weekly Morning. What are you feeling?
Maybe a B, just for me, just because Billy Bat. And Planets, I think it kind of deserves a B. It has really good stuff. It just isn't as good as some of its peers.
Yeah, and I'm gonna make the judgment call to put it below Young Jump, because I kind of like Young Jump just has more of my favorites in it. Like, I don't particularly love anything in Morning, to be honest. We also have Morning 2, which just kind of was a spin-off kind of complement magazine that came out in 2006. For me, I've read Saint Young Men, Amane Gymnasium, that's a kind of Furuya manga, but that's all I've kind of completed from it. I think Witch Hat Atelier?
Is it Morning 2?
That's in Morning 2.
Oh, okay. So I've read that one. I didn't put it in here on the list because I don't think I had it on Mall. But I've read that one. And that's a really good manga. But I don't know. That's the only thing I've read from Morning 2. Personally, just kind of feel like it's a worse version of Morning. But I'll let you make the call.
Yeah, I mean, I'd put this like a low C, to be honest. Like, there's really, at best, you know, it's a better Ultra Jump situation where it's like it's got one really good manga kind of carrying it right now in Witch Hat. But at least from like the others that I've sampled or know about, like, they seem decent at least, which I couldn't say for Young Jump necessarily. So I'd probably go low C.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, moving on to the fucking behemoth that's known as Monthly Afternoon. Started in 86, and yeah, like I said, this was, you know, originally Morning's little bro, right? This was kind of home of the Morning rejects. But I mean, if you just look at, you know, what manga this serialized, and these are just the ones that I've read. There's Vinland Saga. There's various manga by Nihei, such as Blame and Knights of Sidonia, which are essentially his two biggest hits. Mushishi, Yokohama Kaidashi Kaiko, In It's an Endless World. We've got manga by Kaori Ozaku, right? God's Lie, Golden Sheep, Genshiken, Mysterious Girlfriend X, and there's actually more. I kind of tried to condense this list a bit. So this is a heavy-hitting seinen magazine.
Out of the ones that you missed, I think Villain Saga and Parasite are the two others. And Megami-sama, the How My Goddess that I mentioned before, is kind of like huge in the 80s, like biggest rom-com possibly, or one of the biggest rom-coms. Kind of has gotten like obscurity recently, but was very big back in the early days of anime.
I remember even you and I did that video on your channel where we went back and looked at old forum posts from the 2000s, and pretty consistently, Oh My Goddess was amongst the highest rated series, and some of the most frequently discussed series on those forums. So, like you said, it's kind of been lost to time, but I mean, it was a absolutely foundational rom-com.
So honestly, I mean, it just has so much good hits, like so much good stuff. I would put it possibly S.
Yeah, this is a strong S, because I mean, there's so many other great series. I mean, ongoing titles, you know, there's History, there's Vinland Saga, Skip and Loafer, Blue Period. You know, we never even mentioned Blade of the Immortal or Land of the Illustrious. I mean, this is a hard-hitting seinen magazine, and I think S is where it belongs.
Honestly, I think even the stuff that I read are not real that popular tend to be stuff that I enjoy. Like Eden, It's an Endless World is amazing. I think Suiki, which is by the same guy who did Mushishi, also really good. 5 centimeters per second, amazing movie. Manga's not as good, but it's still good. You know, it's so much good stuff.
Definitely deserving of the S tier. That then brings us to Bi-Weekly Evening, right? So this one is the latest of the one-day line. It started publication in 2001, and unfortunately it stopped publishing last year in 2023. I'm not entirely sure why, but I think when you look at some of the titles on it, it starts to make a little more sense. It had Inuyashiki by Oku, which is, you know, I like it, but I think most of Oku's works outside of Gantz, and even including Gantz, there's a good case to be made that they're all kind of shit. And fair enough, right? They also published or serialized the kind of condensed version of Gon, right? Kind of the best of, you might say, which is, I mean, honestly, the preferred way to read it. I know, like, it's got this, people praise it for its art, and its art is very good, but at the same time, it kind of runs its course pretty quickly. So this condensed version is kind of better, in my opinion. But it's also got some pretty important legendary manga like Shamo or Raw Hero, you know, from the Manga Prison School. And of course, I'm, you know, deliberately not mentioning this one yet, but it has one of your favorite manga on here as well.
Yeah, Kasane. I mean, I could just spend the entire day talking about Kasane. I think it's among like my top 10 favorite manga of all time. Although the only two stuff that I read from Evening was Kasane and Inuyashiki. But there are two manga that, you know, I rank pretty highly. I think Inuyashiki, I've read it. I don't remember if it was this year or if it was the end of last year that I've read it. But overall, I think it's not against, but it's close.
In terms of, you know, for me, it's like, do I like evening more or morning? I think I have to respectively give it to morning. Just, I mean, honestly, for Vagabond alone, and just for it being that kind of original seinen magazine for Kodansha. I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about evening? Where would you place it?
I don't know. Like, it's hard to have like a full grasp of the magazine, because yeah, the two manga that I've read I really like. One of them I really love. I would say even. But then again, that's two titles.
Yeah.
Maybe like top of C would be, or like bottom of B would be where I put it.
I might give it maybe C. Like it does feel like it's kind of a tier below morning, and I mean it's kind of implicitly recognized by Kodansha itself since it canceled serializing this magazine. So no. We'll do top of C. Maybe. Do I like Jump Square more? I'm thinking, like, the more I think about it, like,
yeah.
Do I like Jump Square more? Do I like V Jump more?
I would put it above V Jump personally, I think.
Okay, I can agree to that. All right, so we have a few more kind of miscellaneous seinen magazines from Kodansha, starting with Weekly Young Magazine, which is still ongoing. It started back in 1980, and I've read a lot from this, but I don't know if I've read a lot of good manga, per se. You know, like Harem Marriage was one. Actually, I read that on your recommendation.
And I didn't. It's a fun thing.
Yeah.
I saw the manga. I talk about it.
That's the thing. I got the recommendation from you, and you hadn't even read it still. But it's the harem where everyone wins, right? Imperfect Girl. It's got like Yutai Nova, which is one of Oshimi's kind of like a weirder middle period manga. I think the couple good ones I read though that I liked were by Minoru Furuya, who did Himizu and Sugatera, which both ran in this magazine, which I both enjoy quite a bit.
To me, I've read a lot of really good stuff from Young Magazine. A lot of really good stuff now that I'm looking at the list. So let's just start. Akira, Chavitz, Dragonhead is one of my favorite horror manga of all time. XXolic, it's to me the best clump manga that I've read, and one of my favorites.
Wow.
It is probably one of the earliest manga that I've read, and easily one of the reasons like why I start reading manga more. It has initial D, which as someone who's friends with people who love cars, like we're not even anime fans, like they know Initial D, they've seen Initial D, they love Initial D. That's for a manga to have like that, reach where people that of course it's a car manga and they like cars, but for a manga to be like that, or an anime in this case because they've seen the anime, like they like cars, so they know of Initial D.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has Kaiji. I've only read part 1 and 2, but Kaiji is really, really, really good. And then it has Yarisugi Companion, which is the worst thing. It's not the worst manga I've read, technically speaking, but it is the manga that has offended me the most. The manga I have regret reading it the most, I'll say that.
Oh.
Which is a manga by the same guy who has written Prison School. And I hate it. I just hate the fact that it exists. But that massive dip aside, honestly, it's a really good magazine.
I was going to say, if I were to have just rated this according to the series I've read, it would be much lower. But when you kind of went through some of the stuff you read and kind of highlighted, some of its breadth, we might say, I'm much more up on this magazine, right? I mean, it's got some big clamp manga, it's got Akira, Initial D, Kaiji, it's got some bangers.
Honestly, I think it's better than Young Jump, so that to me automatically puts it on top of B. Now the question is Kaiji and Akira like enough to put it on A? Because we're talking about two of the most important manga. Like, no exaggeration, like Akira is one of the most important manga.
Yeah, period. I think A for sure. Yeah. I mean, especially when you factor in stuff like the clamp manga and Initial D. I think a deserved A. We then have Young Magazine Web. I couldn't find much info on, but presumably is a kind of online manga service, right, akin to Shonen Jump Plus, but for seinen. And it doesn't have a big catalog. It doesn't have a particularly good catalog either. It's kind of just like a bunch of meh erotica. Like ongoing right now, it's got I Want to See You Embarrassed, My Girlfriend's Friend, I Won't Sleep With You for Free. So it's a lot of like mediocrity.
So S tier?
Yeah, of course. Right under afternoon. No. I mean, it's an F. I actually think no, I'll be disrespectful. I'm going to put this over Magazine Pocket. I think this mediocre erotica I'm enjoying it more than anything I would enjoy in Pocket. So, and next we have Monthly Magazine Z. This one also kind of ended publication a while back though. So this one only ran for 10 years from 1999 to 2009. And my impressions are pretty low on this magazine. It seems to be a lot of manga adaptations of anime. So like the Fooly Cooly mangas in here, which I'm pretty low on. It's got like the Wolf's Rain manga, the Big O manga, right? Again, both just kind of generally poorly received manga adaptations of great anime. I think it's got a couple Gundam manga, but again, if you talk to any Gundam fan, like other than Origins, they're gonna say pretty much stay away from any Gundam manga. And I think Go Nagai's kind of got some like throwaways in this magazine, but like it's not good, and I can understand why it was canceled.
Yeah. I've only read 3 manga of this magazine, and one of them is the Fooly Cooly manga. Personally, I do like it. It's different, but I do like it. Then I read Manga X Another, which is an adaptation of a video game called Manga X, which I don't think it's real. It's the same Atlas, the guys who made Persona. But I think this is like a deep cut from their library. The reason why I read this one, the reason why it's kind of like important to me, kindish, it's the debut manga by QI Ashida of the Red Road fame. And she does, this manga is visually so interesting and unique. But it is an adaptation and kind of like an ad, essentially, for a deep cut game for the PS2. And then the other one I read was Cat Diary, which is it's real fun. It's Junji Ito's take on an autobiographical comedy manga. Personally, I love it. I loved it because his cats behaved very much like my cats.
Oh, nice.
So I related to that a lot. It's like an interesting oddity in his library, but not something that I would say makes the magazine.
Yeah, I'm my impressions is that this is a magazine full of kind of anime adaptations, and I'm pretty low on those. I was actually gonna just give this flat out an F, but with how you spoke of those last two manga, I'm feeling a little softer towards it. So, I'll let you make that final call.
Yeah, whatever is from it, I feel like it is more interesting than the stuff we've put on F. Not just more interesting, but also more recognizable.
Yeah.
I think the Wolf Children manga and the Fully Kuli manga are at least, well known.
Yeah. And, Gundam and Go Nagai are, right? It's got Kamen Rider here and Ultraman on this cover, so yeah, definitely D at least. Do we think better or worse than monthly Shonen Jump, though?
Because I haven't read anything from monthly, I'll let you decide.
I'll put it under. And then our last KODANSHA manga is Bessatsu Young Magazine, which I'm assuming is kind of like a seinen equivalent to Bessatsu Shonen Magazine. It also started running in 2009, so the same year. And, just to keep it a buck, this one's kind of a lot of nothing too. It's got some manga by Oshimi. It's got Avant-Garde Yumiko and Devil Ecstasy, which, probably on the lower end of Oshimi's works, so that's not really even saving it. And even when I scrubbed its very small catalog, the most notable thing I found was a Phoenix Wright manga spin-off.
Oh, I have that.
How is it, at least?
No, I haven't read it. I bought the first volume, but I bought it from the same guy who I bought the I Love You manga, and both of those series are out of print, so I'd never gotten the second volume. From what I just looked like, just opening the book and stuff. Also, I'm a massive Phoenix Wright fan. I'm replaying right now the game for the third time, the trilogy. But even then, I haven't read it, so
yeah,
it's not something that I hope and I need to read this, Yeah.
So I still think those couple Oshimi manga get it out of F, but this D tier is looking more and more like a coin toss each time we put something in there. Because right now, just to remind you, Ultra Jump is only ahead because of JoJo's, right? Specifically parts that neither of us have read. Monthly Shonen Jump is basically being represented almost entirely by Claymore. I kind of just really like this cover for Magazine Z, but when I actually look at the things I've read from it, I'm really not impressed. So I don't, maybe just because it's Oshimi, I'll put it here, maybe in D.
I mean, sounds good. The only actual thing to read from it was Avant-Garde Yumeku. It was fun.
Yeah, it's not a good manga in and of itself, but I think it's a good primer for understanding Oshimi, for kind of getting into him and his philosophy of writing.
Definitely don't use it as the first Oshimi manga to read.
Yeah, I think my ideal Oshimi pipeline for people is, read 2 of Aku no Hana, Blood on the Track, and Inside Mari, any 2 of those, then read Avant-Garde Yumiko, and then, go crazy. I kind of recommend, maybe some of the better mid-cuts before you go into another one of his magnum opuses, right? So you have something good waiting for you at the end. That's kind of my prescribed pathway, Devil Ecstasy is definitely like on the bottom of this is like you're really in deep, you're into the weird shit, and you're it's too late for you. You might as well just read Devil Ecstasy. So
I need to get that phase.
Anyways, so I guess that kind of brings us now into our third publisher we're going to talk about, and that is of course SHOGAKUKAN. So there's really only 2 shonen magazines I want to talk about for this bad boy because being upfront, this is going to be home of the heavy-hitting seinen magazine. And if you thought Afternoon was a heavy-hitting seinen magazine, you have not seen heavy-hitting seinen magazines. But before we get there, of course, let's start with Weekly Shounen Sunday, which is, as I already mentioned, kind of one of those really early foundational shonen magazines, right? So this one started in 1959, again, much before Weekly Shonen Jump. And I think Sunday still has a pretty tight cult following. It's got a lot of regular readers. It's still, decently circulated.
I'm not sure if this is the 3rd best-selling manga magazine because Korakoro Comics is pretty high, but I think it's like the 4th.
Oh, okay, that's good. But in terms of actual manga that I completed, I've not really read much from Sunday. I've read a bit of Komi Can't Communicate and Silver Spoon and Drifting Classroom. That's literally all I read from this foundational shonen magazine, which is kind of hard to believe. I don't know if you have a better experience with it than I do.
I've read a couple more things, but now that I look at the list, like the main ones, I would say is Detective Conan. I read like 200 chapters of that. Remna Half. I read half of Remna Half. And then I read like Blazing Transfer Student and Blazing Ninja Man, which I forgot the name of the mangaka, but it was kind of like a big name there in the 80s. I think it's still like doing manga for Sunday. I don't think it's in the main magazine, but he still like publishes like side stuff there. But yeah, I think mostly Detective Conan and Rumiko Takahashi, Ramna Half, Yurusei Gatsuda, Inuyasha, she is kind of like the main deal of Sunday. Her and Adachi, which I haven't read anything from Adachi, but he does like Touch, a couple other stuff. Actually, I read his debut manga, which was a rom-com, but he's basically like the main sports mangaka,
right,
of Japan.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah, I have not really read any of his work or her work, to be totally honest. But again, like I said, just having not consumed many Sunday series, I guess that naturally follows. But there's also some other pretty big, significant manga historically, like Dororo by Tezuka was serialized here. Getter Robo by Go Nagai was also serialized here, and that's one of the most foundational mech series that exists. I actually hope to read that next after I finish Mazinger Z. And then like it also just has like some of those kind of cult classic battle shonen like Zatch Bell and Magi. So it does have a lot of manga that I can see have big followings and have certain acclaim, but it's just like, maybe outside of Drifting Classroom, I haven't really read any of them.
It is interesting because I think it has like some of the most influential like mangaka. Like again, Adachi is considered like to be the main sports guy. Rumiko kind of created rom-com shonens. In terms of like historical value, it has a lot of value, but I don't know, it never felt like it was, at least in sales, at the same level as a magazine, as Jump. It always felt like it was the third kid of the 4 of them, I would say.
Yeah, that's my perception too. I think there are probably more people that just read series from, say, Weekly Shonen Magazine, but I think like in terms of consciously following a magazine, there are probably more people that follow Sunday than shonen magazine is my guess, at least over here in the West.
I can see that. Again, it has like names that, you know, the fans of those mangaka are gonna go to Sunday. I forgot the name of the guy who makes Detective Conan, but he also has like 3 Sunday manga that are like all of them pretty big in Japan.
Oh.
One of them is Yaiba, which is, I think 2 days ago, as of this recording, was announced by Viz as coming translated. I'm super excited about that because I grew up with the anime and I used to play as, like, I don't actually remember the anime. I just remember like playing as the main character, like on the yard. But I'm excited to like jump in back and visit that.
When I look at its ongoing roster, it's not especially strong, but then, you know, it's got like Frieren, which is obviously huge right now. It's got Komi, which I think has its cult following. Case Closed, as you mentioned. So it does have bangers, but in terms of, you know, things you hear people talking about. Sorry, I sound like DJ Khaled when he was criticizing Tyler the Creator for beating him. You know, like the clip where he's like, you know, my album that you actually hear people play in the streets, in the bar, not no obscure shit. I feel like that's exactly what I'm saying here with like Weekly Shonen Magazine versus Shounen Sunday, where it's like, these are all obscure ones, you don't hear this in the streets, but it's probably objectively popular, objectively pretty well received.
I mean, Detective Conan was the best-selling manga back in the 90s. I remember like Oda talking about like when he started wanting to surpass Detective Conan because Detective Conan was the best-selling manga at the time. So it's not that one is definitely not, at least an obscure one.
Yeah. It's just Western man screams at cloud, I guess. I don't know where to put it though.
That is what I was gonna say. It's one of those where I actually think I like the little that I've read more than magazine. Actually, let me just look at my own. I mean, magazine has Lavina, so that.
Yeah, I definitely think I like magazine probably like a tier more, like, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I can see that. So high B?
Yeah. I think out of respect I'll give it over Young Jump, but I think anything over a B, I just can't justify it.
There's gonna be like people mad.
Yeah.
I just know it. Like, this is the one.
But we'll deal with those as they come. Now, moving on to a less exciting magazine is Shounen Sunday Super, which, from what I can gather, was just a sort of spin-off that started in 1978, and it has a shallow pool of manga. I've only, you know, attempted to read Spriggan from it, and that was kind of like okay. Otherwise, like, for manga I know about, Alice in Borderland I think started in here, but that was eventually moved to Shounen Sunday. So, and don't even ask me what's going on in this manga, right, like this magazine right now, because I've tried to look and I don't know what I'm looking at.
Oh no, I mean, I've read Alice in Borderland, which I thought ran completely in here. I knew it had moved to Sunday. That manga is great. I love that game manga, and that is among my favorite, like top 2 maybe. And I've read Mermaid Saga, which is a Rumiko manga that it was okay. It's definitely not talked about as one of their best, and I can see why. It is just okay. It's interesting because it was one of the first manga, I think, like translated into English back when it was still like flipped. But like, especially knowing that my favorite manga in here actually moved to another, I can't give it like that high of a ranking.
Yep. It's basically in the same echelon as like Monthly Shonen Jump or Monthly Shonen Magazine, but in my opinion, this might be the worst of the 3.
Yeah. And
for that reason, like, I won't give it an F, but it'll be bottom of the D, I think.
I think that's fair.
Because it's like, it's not necessarily that it has anything that's especially bad. I mean, the shallow pool works against it, but like, it doesn't appear to have anything like super abhorrent from my perspective. Obviously every magazine does, but I'm just saying, again, we're evaluating this from our limited perspective. And given that, I don't think this is as bad as the Fs.
No, I don't think so.
Thankfully, nobody with real taste goes to Shogakukan for their shonen series. People with taste go to them for their seinen series, because they are home of the big comic series, which is probably some of the best magazines around. Their first was Semi-Monthly Big Comic, which started in 1968, and this is probably one of the more, I don't want to say obscure, but perhaps dated, just in the sense that a lot of big manga from it just kind of got lost to time. You know, how kind of paradigms shift and, you know, the manga we talk about kind of shift with it. So I think that's kind of what happened here to Big Comic, but at least from what I've read, you know, there's a couple manga by Tezuka, Ayako, and MW, which I personally love both, but then just going through some of its kind of legendary picks, you know, it's got a lot of manga by Jiro Taniguchi, right? A Distant Neighborhood being, I guess, kind of the one that really sticks out. And of course, for ongoing series, one that's really important historically would be Golgo 13, which is somehow still ongoing. You know, it's maybe kind of like one of those Detective Conan things where it's just going to go on forever. But that's kind of my narrowest understanding of this magazine.
Like Golgo 13, like the author died last year, I think, or 2 years ago, and it's still ongoing. Like, he picked someone else to continue the manga. I think the idea is to continue forever. It is the longest running manga still ongoing. But yeah, I read Ayako, which I really enjoyed, and I read A Distant Neighborhood, which honestly anything by Jiro Taniguchi that I've read so far at least is pretty good. I think this one might be his best. I don't think Big Comic is as good as the spin-offs that we're going to see later, though.
Yeah, definitely not. I think it's the exact same trajectory as, say, Morning, where that was kind of the original flagship magazine, and maybe back in the day it was home to some really popular series that, you know, beloved but are now lost to time. I think that's kind of what happened here, because when we get into the next couple, it's essentially a morning and afternoon sort of transition. And so before we kind of make that move, I guess, let's give it a little ranking. So it's probably a little worse than Morning, I think, but they're very close. I could be convinced otherwise.
No, they're like, Morning has Billy Bat though.
Yeah, true.
And Planets. I think I like Morning a bit more.
And I mean, you know, might I add Vagabond and Gon? I think that definitely gives it the edge.
Yeah. I definitely I like how we started by like saying this is the greatest like seinen magazine of Vault B. Below Morning B, bottom of B.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think with one magazine, it's gonna justify everything. Not this next magazine, but eventually. So next we have Semi-Monthly Big Comic Original, which was a sister magazine of Big Comic that debuted in 1972. And the kind of idea was that 1 month Big Comic would serialize, and then the next month Big Comic Original would serialize. Much like the previous Big Comic, this one, you know, I've read a sliver of series that I really love, but it's just, it's got a shallow pool of manga that I appreciate. So the big ones, of course, and I mean these are fucking huge ones, are a couple manga by Urasawa. We have Pluto and Monster. Two huge, dare I say, monstrous series. The other one that I might mention is No Longer Human. The Junji Ito adaptation ran in here, but
still haven't finished it.
And you own it physically, so you have no reason not to.
I really don't. I read half of it, and then I stopped, and then I never continued. Now I need to start from the beginning. And it's a short manga. It's like it's one volume. It's a big volume, but it is just one. But what I've read, I liked it. Other than that, yeah, Monster, Pluto, Mujirushi, which is a short one-shot, also by Urasawa. A lot of people don't like it. I think it's a pretty fun one-shot to show like the capabilities of Urasawa. And The Cats of the Louvre by Taiyo Matsumoto, the same guy who does Ping Pong. Cats of the Louvre was actually like a really beautiful short manga that I think is probably one of his. I mean, it's hard to say one of his best because it's one of those manga where every manga is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. I plan on reading all of his manga. When I went on vacation, I guess in September, I picked up Tekken Concrete and Go-Go Monster. So having read those now, it's really put the fire under me to just explore his whole catalog. I think he's one of my favorite visual artists, and I can't overstate how much I love that kind of scratchy and like expressive style that he has. You know, Ping Pong is such a good example of just how it communicates both like motion in the physical sense, but also like kind of emotional motion, if that makes sense. But you'd have to go through an actual manga to make this discussion make sense, and we're not doing that today. So,
but it is one manga. I'll just say that you're gonna look at his heart and it's gonna be like, it doesn't look good. But then, at least that was with me. I read one of his manga. I think I read Ping Pong. I think it was the first one, and it clicked. Like, it made sense. I think Ping Pong and Takemitsu Samurai are the two ones that are good to really understand why his art is actually good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost feels to me like you need to see it in motion. You need to see it kind of unfold to really appreciate it. It's sort of like you wouldn't just take a screenshot of an anime and show that as, you know, representative of the style, right? Like, you'd kind of have to see it in a sequence to really appreciate it. And I think that applies to Taiyo Matsumoto as well.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I know Taniguchi has a few more manga in here. I don't know if you've read any of them.
I haven't read anything from Taniguchi either.
Okay, fair enough. Kurosawa ran in here. That's a pretty big manga.
What is that?
I don't know. I was on my anime list, and I think he's got like the big chin.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. It was drawn by Fukumoto.
It's one of those things where I've seen the name a lot, and I see a lot of good things about it, but I can't actually speak to either what it's about or its particular merits. So I just thought I'd throw it in there for any Kurosawa fans in the audience that might want to have my head over this one.
I know, like, a bunch of my friends love it, but I am also in, like, a Discord server that is, like, huge into kaiji.
My condolences.
And so, like, anything by that mangaka. Kaiji is so good, though.
Oh, that's not about... I wasn't saying my condolences about the manga. At any rate, big comic original. I mean, brother, it's got Pluto and Monster, which to me makes it better than the big comic.
Not sure if I put it on A... it's Monster, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's just got two series I really love, and I don't know if that's... Like, I know we had that discussion about the magazine with Akira and Kaiji, right? Which was...
I think it was Young Magazine.
Yeah, the Young Magazine at the end of A there, I believe, was kind of on the back of Akira and Kaiji alone. But I think I mean, that also had a stacked roster. That had a bunch of like Clamp manga and whatnot too, to be fair. But I think that had like a wide diversity of really great manga. Whereas, you know, two Urasawa works that are like pretty damn similar. I don't know if that's enough to bring it into A. Even though they're both spectacular, like if we're just going to take a step back here and try to assess the magazine as a whole, I don't know if it's got the depth or the variety to make me want to put it in A.
Alright, so we'll throw it on B.
Where?
Maybe between Young Jump and Morning?
Yeah. I feel, and maybe if I'm just gonna get fucking crazy here for a moment, I'm inclined to put Morning below it, and this is almost me just actively being disrespectful, but Monster and Pluto are really good.
Yeah. No, it's Urasawa, man. I agree.
We'll do it.
We're the Urasawa heads. That's why we love big comic.
Yeah, I think now all of our biases are about to come out, because the next magazine is Weekly Big Comic Spirits, which started in 1980 and essentially has every manga in my top 20. Like, that's basically this magazine. I mean, from Asano, it's got Pun Pun, it's got Dead Demons, it's got a bunch of one-shots. From Ito, it's got like Uzumaki and Gyo. From Matsumoto, it's got like Ping Pong and Tekken Concrete. From Urasawa, it's got 20th Century Boys, Asadora, Happy. From Naoki Yamamoto, it's got Arigato and Believe. Like, it's the... If you thought Afternoon was stacked, like, Afternoon is stacked for your generic Mal seinen elitist. Big Comic Spirits is stacked for the niche of
Yeah.
My Name is Doofy and Manga Crash.
Yeah. And you even I was hearing you list everything like Homunculus, which a lot of people love, is also in here. I Am a Hero is also here. I think the rest, you mentioned it. Saikano, I don't like Saikano, but I know a lot of people do like Saikano. And it was like this big manga. If you're like an Asano fan, that's where he started. He started as an assistant for Saikano, and he basically used a lot of what he learned there. It's just like a cult hit. And I think that's it. This is like, I don't think the Big Comic Series has some of the biggest manga out there, but it definitely has a lot of really strong cult hits. I don't know, it has, I think, 3 of my 10 out of 10s. Good Night Pun Pun, Dead Demons with the Century Boys. A lot of 9s as well.
Yeah.
Even the back catalog, the lesser known stuff, I like most of it.
It's one of those magazines where even the average cut is a cut above most. And I don't know who's in charge of this magazine, but talk about a man of fucking taste. And so I think it should come as no surprise to anyone that this is by far the best magazine we've rated so far.
Yeah, this is the best one. My friend's gonna go to Japan at the end of this month. He asked me if I wanted something from Japan. I want to be Comic Spirits. That's what I want. I want an issue of this thing.
That does not need any further discussion. However, the big comics do not stop there, because in 1987, they released semi-monthly Big Comic Superior, which was a kind of special issue of original, but it eventually ended up selling as much as the other 3, so it just kind of became another mainstay in the big comic line, right? That's just how insane this line is. Now, I'll be completely transparent. This one's maybe not as strong as Spirits, but I'm thinking it's still probably a cut above the other 2. It had Blood on the Tracks. It had a couple more manga by Asano, right? Downfall, which I love. It's currently serializing Mujina, which is his ongoing series. From Oku, it has Gigant, right? So these are all series that I deeply love. And once you kind of go backwards into the pool, it's even more full than that, right? Sanctuary is a pretty big manga.
I haven't read it, but I know it's pretty big. I think it has a big cult following. The mangaka, I've read some other stuff from him. He's a pretty good artist as well. But yeah, personally, the only thing I've read was Downfall. But I definitely also read Blood on the Tracks. I think I've only read 1 chapter of Vagina. So I don't know. I've heard people saying it's the worst Asano so far.
What?
That's just what I've heard. It's not my opinion.
Yeah, okay. I've read 5 chapters of it, and I really like it. But I also just, whatever he does, I kind of love, so.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I'm a big Asano fan. I'm an Asano fanboy. I'm probably gonna like it anyways.
I like it because I feel like these past couple of years, he's really been experimenting, stylistically, right? We kind of know him for a lot of those kind of depressing dramas, but Dead Demons was a pretty stark contrast to what he was known for before that, and I think Mujina is kind of doing that again. And maybe you could speak to this better than me. This isn't obviously especially relevant for Big Comic Superior, but how was Dead Demons initially received when it dropped?
We have to say, I don't think Asano is that popular actually in Japan. I know Goodnight Pun Pun hasn't sold that much. All things considered, it's a couple million copies, which is good, but overall, not so much.
That's right. Yeah, it's very. His importance is, I think, a little overstated by some Western readers. He's definitely not a nobody, but like you said, just his impact is not necessarily reflected in global sales versus some of the other big mangaka that we've talked about today.
I think he's actually more popular in the West than in Japan, or if not more popular, it's more relevant, I would say, compared to the rest of the manga landscape. Because Pun Pun is massive here. Like, at least in terms of notoriety, I think most manga fans have been around for a while know of Punpun.
But I guess to kind of cap this discussion, I feel like I'd be remiss to not mention Fool Night, which is currently ongoing in this magazine. And while I haven't personally read it, it does seem to have like a pretty strong following right now. It's definitely in conversations for one of the best ongoing series from what I can gather. So I just thought it'd be nice to kind of mention that as well.
I know Zach from Uchu Shelf. He loves that manga, and he's someone who's like favorite mangaka or Asano Urasawa, so we probably would love it as well if we give it a try.
Right, okay, checks out. So, Big Comic Superior, for me, I think better than Big Comic Original.
Because I only had written Downfall, I was going to say it was the worst, but you sold me on it. And then, Blood on the Tracks is also like amazing. So yeah, I think we can put it above it.
Perfect. Alright, so that kind of caps off the big comic line. However, SHOGAKUKAN still has a couple other miscellaneous seinen magazines. We're going to start here with Weekly Young Sunday, which began publication in 87 and ceased in 2008. And this is just another, a banger, frankly. Now, Punpun, I know, started here, though of course it didn't finish there. But it did have Solanin, which is probably my second favorite Asano work, and Rainbow, which was at one point in time my favorite anime, if you can believe it. So I think like just based off those, it's a pretty strong catalog. And when you kind of look back, it's got things like, a couple of Hideo Yamamoto manga like Ichi the Killer, Voyeurs. The World Is Mine, I know, is another kind of big one. So it's looking pretty good. What are you thinking?
I think I've only read Solanin. Which, to be fair, is kind of enough to put it on A. But like all of those names, I think were pretty big. I think it's a solid magazine, just based on the manga you've talked about. Again, I can only speak of Solanin. Solanin is the manga I've read the most times, maybe. Emanon's tied there, but it's just like such a good manga to just jump in when you're feeling down.
I think this magazine kind of feels similar to Superior in that it's kind of got big mangaka, at least big mangaka that we love, but maybe not necessarily their biggest hits, but not their most niche hits either, right? So again, probably approximating it somewhere in the B, and I'm thinking like, is it better or worse than, Big Comic Original?
It has Monster though, so I'd put it below.
Yeah, I like Rainbow.
I have not read Rainbow, but I have not many good things to say about that mangaka.
What the fuck's up with that, Crash?
I think his art is pretty good. It also looks kind of fake, but I would have to go like a whole video on that.
So yeah, Young Sunday, it probably doesn't beat fucking Monster and Pluto, but it's probably better than Morning.
Yeah, I think I can say that.
Alright, so that brings us now to Monthly Sunday Gene X, which began publication in the 2000s, specifically 2000, and it's got a couple Asano anthologies, but
this is kind of like where Asano started. It also has Alice in Borderland. If you like Alice in Borderland, it's a pretty good spin-off. When it comes to spin-offs, I would actually say it's the best spin-off I've read, just because spin-offs tend to be kind of trashy. And I read Jormungand, which I want to finish it, but it's a struggle, because there's something though. It's one of those manga where I started reading it and like I want to read something else.
Yeah,
the ones where it's like it's not bad, but I still have 40 chapters and I want to read something else.
Yeah, it's like those like 6, 7s, maybe 7.5s that you're like, this is solid and I can see this getting better, but it's just like, I need something new now. Like, it's overstayed its welcome. It hasn't taken that extra step to get to the 8. Like, I'm just not entirely invested.
Exactly. So I don't know. It's not bad. I think I like pretty much every manga that I've read from there.
Oh, have you read Black Lagoon?
No, I know a lot of people like it.
Yeah, that is serializing in here, which is a pretty big name. Again, like, there's too much speculation here. Like, I've just read 2 anthologies by Asano. Like, that's it for me.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a solid magazine. It doesn't really have anything that I think is, puts it above anything that we put on B, maybe.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like we've been stuck in seinen brain rot where everything's just kind of going against each other in B tier.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't even know if it's better than Jump Square.
Yeah, I getcha. And maybe not, honestly. I think Jump Square has, like, bigger titles.
Yeah. And even if we look down here at, like, V-Jump and Monthly Shounen Magazine had 2 of my all-time favorites. V-Jump has, like, a really great overall magazine experience. And, like, Sunday, GNX, I don't know if it does either of those things. So I'm kind of tempted to just put it, like, just barely above Morning 2, like, at the bottom of C.
Yeah, I think GX looks good there.
Okay, and to kind of wrap up the Shogakukan lines here, we have Monthly IKKI, which is unfortunately no longer in publication. Right, so it kind of published from 2003 to 2014, so, about a decade. And it originally, interestingly, started off as a spin-off of Spirits, with a kind of focus on underground and alternative manga. And I think you can kind of get that when you look at some of the manga it's published, most famously.
Dorohedoro.
Yes.
My all-time favorite manga. And the reason why I heard about IKKI, and just because of Dorohedoro, I like IKKI, just as a concept, just as an idea. Do I like every manga in this magazine? No.
You say that as if there are a bunch of stinkers in here.
There's a couple of manga that are really well received anyways, but I personally do not like. Specifically from the same mangaka, Children of the Sea and Witches, and I'm not sure if Little Forest was also in IKKI, which is by the same mangaka. I just think it's kind of like, the art is amazing. The art of Children of the Sea is so beautiful, but the manga, Jesus Christ, it's so boring. It has Frisia though, and which is probably the best manga by Jiro Matsumoto that I've read.
Speaking of Matsumoto's, we got a couple big ones from Taiyo Matsumoto here, right? Number 5, which, interestingly, I'm having, like, that same experience with Number 5 as you've had with, like, Jurmangan? Jurmangan? I'd go as far as saying, like, this is actually a great manga, and I'm probably halfway through it now, but I get through a volume and I'm so fatigued, and I don't know what it is, but it makes me dread picking it up each time. It also has Sunny, which, to my surprise, was one of the most well-received and most popular, not the most, of course, but very popular Taiyo Matsumoto works, which I've still not read, but...
It's one of the, like, very few manga that is actually being translated into Portuguese. Actually, it's the only manga from him that is actually being translated in Portuguese. European Portuguese, before, some Brazilian guy tells me that they have all of their manga translated or something. We are behind, my friends. But yeah, Sunny's being translated. I think there's a couple of volumes out. I haven't read them though.
Mm-hmm. And the other one I'll just briefly note is Natsumi Ono's House of 5 Leaves, which to many is kind of her magnum opus, though unfortunately I've yet to read.
2 manga that I wanted to talk about. Nickelodeon. Not the show.
What the fuck?
Ran in here.
Nickelodeon?
Nickelodeon, yeah. It's a one-shot compilation, kinda. It's by Seinen Dalman, which is the same guy who does Voynich Hotel. He's like well received when it comes to like niche cult hits. Again, Voynich Hotel, I think it's something that a lot of people like. And you didn't mention this, but Happiness, the one-shot collection by Furuya. At least I have it noted that it ran here.
Yeah, unfortunately that became a victim of my thinning out of things I was going to talk about, but that is one of Furuya's best one-shot collections. I'd reckon to say that that's probably the best.
I think Nickelodeon is worth talking about, at least briefly, right? Because it's one of those like one-shot collections where the stories do start like tying together in the same way of What a Wonderful World, for example. But yeah, this is a magazine that I love in concept. There's a couple of manga in here that I don't like. There's a couple of manga in here that I think are just okay. But it has my favorite manga of all time. Just because of that, I want to love it, you know?
Yeah, and I do appreciate that its whole shtick from the beginning was, kind of underground comics, right? Like, it tried to be a little edgier, and I think that's kind of reflected in some of the mangaka. It housed some of the series it serialized. And you know what? For better or for worse, one of the benefits of no longer being in serialization is you no longer subject yourself to the possibility of serializing bad series that would give your manga a bad name. So now we just get to kind of bask in the positive image of monthly IKKI, right? We get to remember the good times, and the bad just fade away as if they never existed.
That's kind of what it feels like to me.
So I guess I feel comfortable putting this in A, frankly. The question is, I think, if it's better or worse than Young Magazine?
I don't know, I think overall I like more manga, actually, from Young Magazine. But I like the concept of IKKI. I like the idea of IKKI. I like the kind of like manga that they risk putting in.
I'll put it on bottom of A. For now, that wraps up SHOGAKUKAN.
Yay!
Alright, so now we're going to kind of fast forward to historically a newer publisher, right? This is Gangan Comics, of course. And we'll start with their monthly Shounen Gangan, which, of course, is their kind of flagship shonen magazine that started in 1991. And, of course, the big kind of, mascot of this magazine is Full Metal Alchemist. But beyond that, it's got a lot of... I can't describe it. I don't know what it is, but it has a specific style, right? It's got, like, Full Metal. It's got, like, Soul Eater. There's just a certain type of shonen that it's serialized that's kind of just qualitatively different than some of the other ones we've talked about earlier.
I just want to say Gangan is a magazine that every time I read something new from it, I hate it more.
Wait, really?
I just do. Just so we're clear, Full Metal Alchemist is amazing. Soul Eater is amazing. Everything else that I've read from this manga has been boring, and I haven't read that much. I've read Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which is it's Kingdom Hearts. Let's move on. I've read Red Raven, which is honestly probably one of the worst shonen I've read. I've read 66 Seinen or Opart's Hunter, which is the manga by the younger brother of Masashi Kishimoto. It's not bad, but it is that kind of like boring generic shonen that you're just reading and it's like, why am I... there's something about actual genuine mid shonen, because people will call like something like a Demon Slayer, a Jujutsu Kaisen, it's a mid shonen, but when you read like actual real generic shonen, there's just something about it that even if it's not the worst thing, it is tiring. It is very, very much tiring. And I feel like that's, again, with Red Raven that I mentioned before, that's kind of what I feel about it. It is just like this generic, really boring, really tiring kind of manga. Doubt is the other one I've read from it, which is this horror manga. I think it was one of the first horror manga that I read. And again, it's really boring. It's really tiring to read. And that's kind of like the experience of every single manga that I've read from Shounen Gangan, besides, again, the amazing Fullmetal Alchemist and the amazing Soul Eater.
Arakawa has Daemons of the Shadow Realm in here, which is currently ongoing, but like I had the exact same experience with that series. Like I just read it, I'm like, this is just some fucking mid. But the one I think we're both overlooking is fucking Barakamon ran in here.
Did it? I had Barakamon on Gangan Online.
Oh.
Do you want to fact check?
I did before I looked into this because I thought it was strange that you didn't mention it.
Okay, so I had it wrong. I'm so sorry.
Forgiven.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at Wikipedia page. It ran on both.
Okay, fair enough.
So you're both right.
Yeah.
That's how all internet arguments should end.
Yeah, precisely. Now, I mean, with that said, it seems to be like an overwhelmingly middling manga with a couple highlights. To me, it always felt like it tried to be a little like it tried to be more mature battle shonen maybe, or like push some kind of boundaries a little more than say Shonen Jump. But I don't think it ever did that in the right way, bar say Full Metal. I wouldn't even say like Soul Eater, because I feel like early on like Soul Eater is like very ecchi.
Like the thing with Soul Eater, yes, it's full ecchi. That's why I laughed. I think I saw on Twitter like the other day a guy saying that it was amazing that the main character of Soul Eater, like the Maka, she never like there's never a upskirt scene of her in the anime, and all the comments are like, well, I guess you haven't read the manga. Because Soul Eater is, at least very early on, one of the etchiest things I've read, and I've read a lot of ecchi things. But after the prologue, which I think the prologue was like the first like volume or so, he wrote it, and then there was a pause, and then he came back to write the rest. And after that prologue, like the manga really kicks, and the later half of Soul Eater is really, really good.
I do hope to eventually read it. I'm kind of an anime only for Soul Eater, so I kind of reserve judgment on the series. But with all that said, I think it's not even in conversation for B. The debate is really C or D.
It's one of those, like, Full Metal, though.
That's the thing, like Full Metal, Barakamon, and Soul Eater kind of are, I think, enough to get it in C. Because nothing in D had like that same level of like both variety and caliber. I think just having Full Metal and Barakamon's kind of like pretty big feat. They're quite different, yet both done exceptionally well.
Yeah, and like because of the manga that they had, when I started like getting into manga in the late 2000s, Gangan was actually the second magazine I've heard about.
Oh,
because you're like, oh, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, Death Note, that's in Jump. What's next? Well, Full Metal, Soul Eater. Well, that's Gangan.
Yeah, exactly. So for that, I would probably put it under monthly Shonen Magazine and above Sunday GX.
Yeah.
So moving along, we now have Gangan Online. Their kind of digital service that they launched in 2008, which is actually quite early as far as some of these digital services go. So props to them for that. But I've not read a thing from this. I mean, we've kind of alluded to the fact that Barakamon was ongoing in here. I know Watamote, I think, is still ongoing. But like this magazine is just kind of obscure to me.
Oh, really? I mean, okay, so Barakamon, right? Watamote, I really like. I'm not following. I stopped following like 2 years ago. But I think it's one of those manga that gets a disservice by the fact that it only got one season of the anime, because it's a manga where it takes a while to build up, and people just know it as like that meme manga that kind of like nobody talks about it anymore. But it actually like gets really good later on, and it has one of my favorite comedy mangaka, Yasunobou Yamauchi, and he has written Daily Lives of High School Boys, which got an anime that was hilarious, and he has written Zyexten, which is also really, really, really funny. It also has Birdcage Castle, which is a very interesting that game manga that I've read, and I've read a couple of other stuff that I didn't really like, but personally I like Gangan Online, honestly, more than like Shounen Gangan.
Yeah, I feel like even as someone who hasn't read a single thing from this this service, I feel like that's just a crazy statement.
Yeah, I know, but just like overall, I just had more fun. Like, Shounen Gangan has higher peaks, but everything else just flatlines to me. And meanwhile, I think Gangan Online just gave me a lot more of a variety of interesting manga to read that I enjoyed. But that is my opinion.
And your opinion is the only one that matters here, because I've not read a single thing from the service. So I'm gonna, you know what? Fucking put it wherever you want, and I'm just gonna accept it.
You know what? I'll put it on C. I'm just kind of trying to decide if I want to put it above or below Jump SQ. I think I have to put it below, though.
Wow, that's a strong statement. But speaking of strong statements, I guess the kind of last Gangan magazine to discuss is Young Gangan, which is their seinen magazine that started in 2004. And, you know, it's kind of whatever. It's got the good darker than black manga, Shogaku no Hana, which I do genuinely love, and I kind of group it together when I talk about my love of darker than black, but it should get some more respect in its own rights, though of course you do have to kind of have watched the original series to really get into this, so it's not like I can just flatly recommend this to manga readers. And then Ibitsu, which was a pretty trashy horror manga, to be completely honest.
I keep getting recommended Ibitsu. That's I've read it, but it surprised me how often I'm like, I like horror manga, and someone just goes, you have to read Ibitsu. It's like, do I?
It's like one of those ones that I feel is like strangely popular. Like the copy I have of it, my dad bought for me like at a yard sale in my like small town of 6,000 boomers, you know what I mean? And a couple grandkids, right? So it's like the fact that it's just kind of ended up here like that, I don't know, speaks to something, I think. I don't know why this was the one that kind of took off, but that main character, I feel like I've seen an image of her kind of go semi-viral, like in more, let's say, less invested in anime and manga culture spheres, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's like Junji Ito is popular, like even outside of like manga, because there's horror fans that just like to consume his stuff. I think Ibitsu kinda speaks to the same crowd. I just think there's, you know, not even say like Ibitsu is bad. I like the manga. I think it's a fun horror, and I understand why people like it. I just don't see why it is the one. Other than that, I've read Overbleed. I don't remember anything about it, and I've read Reset, which I also don't remember much. I remember it was okay, and that's kind of like my opinion of all the three of these ones. They're like, I think I ranked all of them like a 7 or a 6 out of 10, and I don't think they're like anything like special when it comes to, you know, manga landscape.
Yep, I'm inclined to agree. This to me is probably the worst of the three.
Easily.
And I know it has My Dress Up Darling, but that's not a manga that I am reading or one that is particularly tailored towards me. It's probably somewhere in D, so I'll probably just put it under Monthly Shonen Jump.
I think it's good there.
So now we kind of get to our last publisher before we get into our sort of couple miscellaneous magazines, but now we get into Akita Shoten, which was another big publisher that kind of emerged around the same time as Weekly Shonen Jump and Shueisha, right? So their kind of flagship magazine rather is Weekly Shounen Champion, which started in 1969, and
nice.
I've read like a very small sliver, but again, it's kind of one of those manga whose I think reputation precedes itself. So for me personally, I've read Laughing Vampire. More importantly, it's got Cutie Honey, which of course was by Go Nagai, and we know now is a sort of proto magical girl manga, though as a manga itself, it's kind of like That's kind of my experience with a lot of Go Nagai, like outside of say Devilman. Like it's really cool historically to read, you know, the origin of these ideas, and you can appreciate his creativity, but in execution, a lot of these, and wow, that's gonna get me fucking castrated online, but a lot of these are a little flat in terms of execution.
I'm not sure if anyone's gonna like castrate you for saying that Cutie Honey of all things is flat.
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm also implicitly applying this argument to like Mazinger Z, so I feel like that could get me in trouble, but the only other one that I'll mention before I let you kind of hop in here is Chaosic Ruin, which I read in pursuit of like another edgy card game manga, and that's precisely what this is. I at one time planned on doing a video about it, but there's just not a lot of substance to it. Like, it's got cool monster designs, but the story's like pretty... It actually reminds me of something that you could have read in Gangan. Like, it's a little kind of ecchi-esque, but a little mid. So I think overall, a magazine.
I think besides, so I read Kuriani as well. Then I read Alabaster, which is a Tezuka manga. I think you'd like. It's not one of his best. I think it was my first Tezuka manga that I read. And then, there's Baki, though. I read the first 2 parts of Baki. Baki is amazing. It is insane. It is dumb. It is, I think, the main reason why people talk about Champion. And if it's not Baki, it's, the daughter of the mangaka of Baki. She has written for this same magazine, Beastars, which is also amazing. So it's not even the magazine, just that blood, like that lineage of people is just amazing.
But like even in terms of like just lineage of the manga, like this is also in the home of Blackjack, right? One of Tezuka's more popular shonen series.
Blackjack is like, I've heard it's just like the best-selling manga when it comes to sales per volume. It hasn't ever been like fully translated into English. Can people even read it all? Because last time I checked, I don't think you could, at least easily. I think there's like a extremely out of print like copies.
Yeah, I do know that like the original run is very out of print right now, and I don't know if there's anything to accommodate that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess briefly before we kind of get into an evaluation, I just want to mention what's kind of going on in the magazine now. So it's got Shy, which is another kind of, I guess you would say it's a superhero kind of manga. A rival, perhaps, is the word I'm looking for, of Go-Go Loser Ranger. It's got Yowamushi Pedal, which has been going on for a little bit.
Isn't that manga, like, I feel like that manga is on the 90s in terms of volumes. I think I saw like a volume 90 something.
That wouldn't surprise me. It's kind of been pedaling along for a while. And otherwise, welcome to the Demon School. Iruma-kun is, I guess, the other kind of one that stood out to me as ongoing in this magazine. But it kind of gives me like Shounen Sunday vibes, but without the same, maybe not as rich a history.
But I feel like Champion is a magazine that is easily the least popular of the 4, like of the 4 big shonens. But I think it's the one that is most beloved by absolute insane people. I think it has a niche there of just having like absolute like insane stuff. Create like manga that other magazines probably wouldn't do. I cannot see like a Shonen Jump ever running something like Baki or something like Beastars. I think just because of that, I really like it. I don't think did I mention Biomeat Nectar? Because I just want to shout out that manga whenever I can. Imagine like slasher movies, horror movies, like, because you watch one and there's always like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those of like the same franchise. And Biomeat Nectar is kind of like this horror movie where every arc feels like, the next movie in the trilogy or wherever. And it just is the manga that just gave me the purest I'm watching a horror movie feel that I ever had. And I love it just because of that.
So, with all that said, I think that this is not a B tier manga. I do not think it is.
I think it's a B tier, honestly.
Wow. I mean, okay. What do I think has the B tier potential? I think Baki, Blackjack, and maybe Beastars. Cutie Honey is like important. Okay, so I'll give it B. Fuck it.
It's very easy for me to change your mind. I just like, no, I think it's B. Like, okay.
Yeah, I didn't take much persuading there. Now, where in B?
I mean, you wanted to put it below B, so I accept like bottom of B.
Okay. B. Look at this. We have like almost a perfect standard distribution here for the rankings of the manga. That's pretty neat.
Doves should be happy.
So, that's kind of the only shonen magazine to discuss from Akita Shoten, but there are a couple of pretty cool, worthwhile seinen magazines worth mentioning. The first being semi-monthly Young Champion, which again debuted in 1988, and this one I think suffers from a shallow pool, but has some pretty good manga. The big 3 for me would be Battle Royale, which is kind of like a classic seinen manga at this point. Sundome, which kind of follows that trend of, beta male and manipulator female, kind of similar to Punpun or Flowers of Evil, probably more closely, which I eat that shit up, so it only was natural that I'd eat up Sundome. And then Alien 9, which is kind of, it feels like Dead Demons a little bit at times, but it's just sort of like a cutesy, not so cutesy sci-fi manga, you might say. And I like these 3 manga a good amount, I would say. But that is pretty much all I can say of this magazine.
So I've read 2 of those. I've read Sunday, which it does not surprise me you like it. It feels like something that Dushimi would write. Personally, I really love Sunday as well. Alien 9 is an interesting read. I've thought about making a video on it just because it is the manga that it feels slow. Like the movement, like everything in the manga feels like slow. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It just gives me like this weird vibe reading it. It's not something that I hated, just something I found interesting. And then I read Mangetsukan Kitan, which is spooky horror Lavina. Basically, it is like a manga very, very inspired on Lavina. Like it takes the same characters, almost like the same character tropes, same idea, but just like every character, instead of like being a girl's dorm, it's like a spooky mansion in the middle of nowhere, and every like girl is like a monster. So it's like Halloween themed Lavina. It's fun. It's a rom-com, ecchi rom-com. I love those, but it's nothing that I'd call special. So I've read Battle Royale, actually. Not everything though. I've read 1 volume of it, maybe. It's absolutely insane. I've watched the movie.
It really feels like the paradigmatic seinen manga. Like, it's just got sex and violent, and it's edgy, and you know what I mean? Like, it's the poster boy of like what I think many people think of when they think of seinen. But like, that's why it's good, you know what I mean? That's exactly why it's good.
Yeah. It's also exactly why I don't know, it also feels different from Vagabond or a Berserk, where it's like, it's this deep philosophical sort of, like, Battle Royale does not. It just wants to just throw that violence in your face.
Yeah, like it maybe gets to like a sort of Lord of the Flies level of literary analysis, but it's definitely lacking in philosophical depth. But that's okay. Like, not every manga needs to be. I put it like on a similar plane as Gantz. I think people would disagree with me about that. I really do think Gantz is just, you let a battle shonen mangaka just ramp everything up. That's really what Gantz feels like. I know people have gotten more out of it, like in terms of analysis, but it's just more popular and people are more willing to find that stuff in it, I guess you could say. But
I think the mangaka wanted to put more stuff there, but I also think Oku also just really loves gore, and so it's just a weird just position where yeah, there's depthness there, but he also just wants to put gore just because he likes it. And you can see that in other manga from him. But I can see why you'd put both of them like kind of like in the same level. For me, like the main one of Young Champion is Sunday. That's the main one I like. Battle Royale, Alien 9, I like them, but I wouldn't put it neither among my favorites, though I haven't read much of Battle Royale again. So
I think it's definitely a B. I think the big issue holding the magazine back is just it has a shallow pool. Like, it has a lot of Battle Royale spin-offs. Like, it's really holding on to the legacy of that manga for, relevance or what have yous. And my impression is just like everything after the original Battle Royale is dog shit. So that kind of docks it a few marks, and it doesn't have like a kind of really deep history. But just what I have read, I do quite like. So I feel like bottom of B-ish, maybe.
Yep. I can agree with that.
That then brings us to Young Champion Retsu, which a spin-off of Young Champion. I'll cut this combo short. For me, it has a couple mediocre erotica. Like so mediocre, they're not even worth naming. It's pretty bottom of the barrel. Even as far as erotica go, it's not particularly good. So there's nothing, I don't know much about this magazine, and everything I know about it is pretty negative.
Okay. So I've only read one manga from it. I liked it. It's Voynich Hotel, which I think I mentioned it early on when I mentioned Nickelodeon, same mangaka. Based on what you're saying, this actually may be the most popular magazine in the most popular manga in the magazine. I think it's a manga that you probably would enjoy, but I don't know. It's not something that would up a rank for me.
I'm just gonna put it in F and below the web one, because I remember that 3 specific ongoing series that I actually kind of enjoy that are also erotica, but it's definitely better than the Pocket, which I thought was like pretty dog shit. So
yeah.
Then we get to our last manga here, and that is, of course, Champion Red, which started in 2002, and this one is, a step up of Young Champion Retsu, but that doesn't really say much. So in terms of what I've completed, it's got Seeds of Anxiety, which is by the PTSD radio mangaka. It's got the Alien 9 sequel, and a shitty adaptation of No Longer Human. Neither Furuya nor Ito, it's some other dude.
Is it the Variety?
No, it's another one.
Okay, many of them are. That's like 4.
I know of 4 manga adaptations. I think there might even be more. But, yeah. So that's it for what I've completed. Now, obviously, that's a very small sliver of what's actually kind of in the magazine. Like, it's got a couple of bangers, and I know one in particular you're quite fond of.
I'm assuming that is Frank and Fren.
You're good at assumptions.
Frank and Fren is just amazing. It's one of the best horror manga I've read, which, is just a position of Seeds of Anxiety, which is one of the worst horror manga that I've actually read.
Wait, you don't like Seeds of Anxiety?
No, I actually wrote for the video I'm working today. I just wrote Fun and Tiny, plus, to be honest, I didn't like them much. That's all it's gonna go in the video. But it's boring horror, man.
It's definitely worse than PTSD Radio, but like, boring, man.
I understand the concept. It's like, oh, what if spooky face? But it's like 200 chapters of this shit. And I read Seeds of Anxiety, and I read Seeds of Anxiety Plus, which is on the original Shounen Champion. And that one's actually a little bit better. I think I had some more stories that I found interesting. But overall, like, together, I think they're literally 200 stories of, look, a spooky face.
Yeah, I mean, bro, Junji Ito made a Creo out of that shit, so...
Junji Ito... But the thing is, Junji Ito has like a decent build-up and an actual story, where Seed of Anxiety is like, goddamn, like, some of them are like 2 pages long. It's just like, guy walks into room, spooky face, whoa, the end.
Yeah, look at it. It's so unconventional, and it's definitely pushing new ground, so you gotta appreciate it for that. Unlike Junji Ito, which recycles the same ideas over and over again.
I can't, man. I cannot I know a lot of people like this mangaka, and I haven't read a PTSD Radio myself because I have PTSD from this one. But I know like a lot of people liked it. I can't.
I like PTSD Radio. I mean, a lot more. I think that's actually a pretty great manga, and I'm not gonna lecture you on why now, but I just think the concept of like, it's non-linear storytelling, but like the kind of theme being like you're scrobbling through like a radio frequency, right? And so like as you kind of scroll back and forth, you kind of get these different sequences of stories, but then as you go back through the radio frequencies, like you kind of revisit them. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of cool little concepts like that going on. I think the actual content of the stories is a little more developed here. It's a lot less. I mean, don't get me wrong, it definitely has a couple of like 4-page chapters where it's like spooky face, but there's more to it than that, damn it.
Okay, I'll believe you. And also read the manga that I don't think anyone else has read, but it's pretty good. It's Change 123, which I like it just on concept alone, because it is an harem rom-com where the guy is in a relationship with 5 different girls, but they're actually like different personalities of the same one girl that he's dating. And like every time that like she changes personalities, she also slightly changes her body, so he manages to have like all the tropes and have the guy still have the relationship that is like he's just dating one girl. It makes sense. I think that's genius, and just on concept alone, I love Change 1, 2, 3. But yeah, Change 1, 2, 3, Frank and Friend are 2 manga that I really like. I'm not sure if they're enough for, really high ranking. But on the other hand, Frank and Friend, man.
Yeah, I'll let you make the call on this one.
Too much pressure. I don't know, man.
I mean, better or worse than Jump Square?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. I think overall I would put it not just below Jump Square, but also below Gangan Online.
Okay, I can live with that. The perfect standard distribution still lives, kind of. All right, and so I guess now we'll kind of conclude with like 15 or so miscellaneous magazines from, other publishers, but not enough publishers to start grouping them. And so these first couple I wanted to look at are really important alternative magazines. The first of these being Monthly Garo. Now Garo, however you want to pronounce it, started in 1964 and went on until about 2002. And this is kind of well known in the manga community as like the alternative manga magazine, right? It's kind of too specialist to really identify with any one demographic. And interestingly, when you look at their history of, stated intentions, their original target demographic was actually young kids. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, but their original intention was to push anti-war and anti-militarism towards young kids. However, as you might imagine, in the late 60s Japan, leftism was really on the rise in college campuses. And so this magazine became a smash hit among college students. And so that's why they ended up kind of switching their aim sort of to that demographic. But again, they host mangaka that cater to practically everybody outside of the kind of traditional demographic groups, if that makes sense. So again, just another cool fact, I guess, because I'm kind of a Garo geek, in the sense that, like, it doesn't contain a lot of manga that I absolutely love, but I love the idea behind it, I love the artistic vision, and I love a lot of the principles that guided the magazine itself, right? Again, the idea was that authors had complete creative freedom, but of course they received no pay as well, so lots of tiny moving parts. I mean, as for manga, I guess, since this is a manga magazine ranking, there's manga by, Yoshihiro Tatsumi, Yoshiharu Suga. I know the Nishioka Kyodai siblings, they have a couple manga published in here starting in the 90s. But in terms of like a specific manga, I guess the only one I'd really even want to talk about is Furuya's debut work, which is Pele Poli, which you could correct me if I'm wrong, but this was not only his first work, but this was kind of something he created with no experience of what a manga really was.
That's the myth, at least. I'm not sure if it's true. I'm not sure if there's like concrete proof of that, but that's at least the myth that people say surrounding this manga, is that Furuya didn't actually had read any manga. It just knew what a manga was, but he didn't actually had read any. And if you read Pelepoli, you can kind of see that in some ways. It's a very different manga from everything else, even including Furuya's like older works. It's so different and bizarre and strange, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything from, well, for one, it's 4-koma, so that's a whole other subsect of the medium that you have to kind of understand, but like the way he's approaching it is even farther removed from, I guess, the conventions of 4-koma. Like, it's really bizarre in terms of like framing and paneling.
That's kind of like the thing. I think if 4-koma is even more like formulaic in a way, and so because of that, I think it's even weirder where the way he does it, it's strange. Even like the paneling, it's simple because it's 4 panels. That's what 4 koma means, and he manages to make that unique in ways where you're not even sure if it's like unique good or unique bad. It's just like, it's something, man. I really like your segment. I really like your segment of like Garo, of everything you said, because I didn't knew that, and learning that it's for kids, or it used to be for kids, like initially, and then looking back at the manga that I've read from it, which Palepoli, I can kind of see maybe, because at the end of the day, it is just a a gag manga. I think it has nudity though, but then the other thing that I've read from them was Goraku, which is from the Nishinoya siblings, which you mentioned, which is absolutely insane. And then there's a couple of one-shots by Kazuichi Hanawa, which some of his work, and especially the work that he did on Garo, are kind of like the early beginnings of the Eroguro genre. And so, like you're reading Eroguro and you're like, oh, this is a magazine that aimed first to kids. It's like, this is not it.
Yeah, well, I reckon maybe by that point they had already decided to make the switch.
Yeah, this is like 70s, I guess.
Right. I think pretty quickly in its serialization it made the switch, just because, I mean, what kid is gonna read a magazine full of anti-war or anti-militarism, right? I understand that they were trying to push a message, and I understand why they would want to push that message to who they wanted to push it to, but it's just like, this isn't gonna work, and evidently it didn't.
Yeah, it's strange. It's fun to learn politics, like Japan political history through manga, because I was reading Bat Kid, but it's like mid-40s, and the volume that I bought has this entire like thesis basically about the surroundings of why that manga was written, and it's just a simple short manga about a kid who wants to play baseball, and then you read everything. It's like, oh, like these guys' original magazine got closed down by the American invasion after the bombs, and they had to like build another one, but they couldn't. They wanted to promote the old, conservative Japanese values, but they couldn't do it like in your face because of the occupation era and everything like that.
Yeah. Whenever you go back and read manga from the 20th century, you miss a lot if you don't understand what was happening in Japan, especially if you don't understand, some of the basic movements in like the Pacific War, right? What happened to Japan after the Second World War, stuff like the university student protests in the late 60s, the political uprisings, right, in the later half of the 20th century. There was a lot going on in Japan in the second half of the 20th century, right, in terms of economic prosperity and recessions. It was a really insane period of time, and the manga that came out were equally as insane, but I think a lot of it can kind of fall on deaf ears when you don't understand the context. And that's not to say you need to be, a historian to read a manga, but the optimal experience would kind of factor in what exactly the context within which they were writing, to understand the struggles they were trying to express, and what solutions were going around at the time that they might be entertaining in their manga implicitly. Things like that I think are cool, but it's a very demanding task. It's not just something you can breeze through.
Yeah, but I mean, that said, a good manga will always be a good manga regardless of the surrounding context. But I think it's always interesting, can give you a better view of why that manga exists.
I 100% agree. I think good storytelling will always kind of reveal itself in some capacity, but I think there are a lot of cases where, as the reader, you have to kind of do the work to understand it. We're getting into some very meta conversations now that are fun to have, but tangential to a manga magazine tier list.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I love it, but I'm trying to be time conscious here.
Yeah. About Garo, I think the other thing I wanted to mention, other than the actual manga, is the fact that Garo is kind of weirdly the most popular magazine in the West in some ways. And this may sound crazy for anyone now, but especially like in the 90s, and there's a lot like Garo manga coming out to the West compared to other magazines from alternative comic publishers and fans, because in a way I think like similar to like, you know, metal music, that metalheads are always going to be looking for metal from, you know, other countries. And so you pick a random country like Portugal, for example, and you're going to check out like what's the most popular band outside of Portugal. The most popular Portuguese band outside Portugal is like a metal band, because metalheads will always, you know, they're the ones that are going to look for this kind of stuff. I think Garo works in a way like a lot of alternative comic book fans are going to be looking for these kinds of comics in other countries, and so they will find Garo manga even before, you know, they know what a manga is, and even before they have the context of like all of this Japanese culture surrounding manga. They'll just want to look some weird, strange, interesting comics, and they will find stuff like Garo. And so publishers have picked some of their stuff, and it has, I think, kind of been one of the most popular magazines outside of Japan for, you know, at least for the initial period of manga in the West.
Absolutely. Like you said, a lot of those alternative comic fans just like alternative comics, so regardless of where it comes from, like you said, they're just going to find it, and that's why there was a lot of Garo published over here in the West so early on. Unfortunately, though, it did stop production in 2002, and, you know, there was a lot behind that. I think in the late 90s, the main editor-in-chief had died, and that kind of caused a big panic within the magazine. They did eventually get bought out by, I think, like a computer software publisher or something, and, you know, they started like dumping a bunch of like ads in the magazines and stuff, and a lot of people from the magazine didn't like that, so they kind of migrated away. And so the last couple of years in Garo was a little more bleak. But before we continue that story, I think we should probably put an arbitrary ranking on this bad boy, eh?
Yeah, it's another one. It's a magazine that historically it's important, but when it comes to like the manga that I've read, I mean, I like them. I think they're interesting. They're definitely unique, but they're not really among some of my favorites. So I don't know.
I think for me, this is going to be similar to like the V-Jump argument, where I've read lots of little one-shots, and, you know, there are important authors in here, but I just fuck with the magazine on principle. And like, to me, it's enough to get it into the A tier. Frankly, like I respect the hell out of this manga.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's Garo. I think we kind of have to respect it, especially the kind of people, like the kind of manga that we enjoy. It's hard not to appreciate Garo just existing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's the thing too. It's like, even if it doesn't have like a bunch of 10s or 9s, I could probably open any issue of Garo and just read, you know, the whole issue probably, and I'd enjoy it all. It wouldn't necessarily blow me away, but I could probably read an issue front to back, no issues, and enjoy it thoroughly. So
yeah, I think A is good.
I'm tentatively gonna just put it at the top of A because I'm feeling fucking crazy. I'll let you edit that as you please, but
oh, let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's put some respect on one of the greats. So, continuing our story with Garo, as I mentioned, a lot of editors and mangaka kind of stopped going to Garo after the passing of the main editor-in-chief and its subsequent purchase by the computer company. And what a lot of those editors and mangaka did was come together and make bi-monthly Axe magazine. So that was actually established in 96 and is still ongoing. I know for a long time it published every other month, so bi-monthly. Again, it just kind of attempted to continue the legacy of Garo. And we can see that it published a lot of the same authors, so like the Nishioka Kyodai siblings, they published a bunch of stuff in here. And the other one that I want to shout out is Tokyo Zombie, which I read, a couple months ago, kind of accidentally. I was trying to read a bunch of manga for my birth year. This was one of them from '98, and it was super fun. Actually, I was quite surprised at how much I enjoyed it. But it does definitely, in every sense, carry the spirit of Garo with it. So
I actually own that one, but I haven't read it yet. So I should.
Oh, I neglected to mention, I own like the physical English anthology called Axe Alternative Manga or whatever that they published, in the 2000s, I guess now. But it's just like a anthology of some of, their favorite one-shots from Axe. And it's a really cool edition that if you ever get the chance to purchase, I'd highly recommend. But
I've only read 2 things from Axe. One of them is Jacaranda, which is honestly the worst manga I've read, or one of the worst manga I've read. Jacaranda is like the worst, like just technically speaking. It's just bad, It's just one of those manga when I read it and like, I could do better. I think anyone could do better. I think the author could probably do better. It's one of those. And then I read Doing Time, which is by the mangaka I literally just mentioned, Anahawa Kazuichi. Doing Time is not Eroguro. It's actually kind of an interesting biographical manga of his time in prison, and that was a good read. That was a really good read. Both of those manga are interesting, and they are. I mean, Jacaranda isn't, but they are different. I should say at least that, and I can see the Garo inspiration in both of them. Tokyo Zombie, again, I own it physically. I have looked at the cover. I haven't actually generally read it. From what I've seen, it kind of feels the same, in the sense that it kind of does feel unique. It does feel, alternative. I don't know. I don't feel like this one is on the same level of Garo, at least historically.
Oh, definitely agreed. It doesn't have the same... it doesn't have the same influence. It doesn't have, from what I can tell, the same sort of magazine element as Garo. So this one I won't be nearly as generous with.
I don't know, just based on what I've read personally, maybe top of C, bottom of B, somewhere around that area. It's what I'd put it.
That's kind of what I'm thinking too.
I'm gonna say, yeah, maybe below Jump Square.
Yep, good call, I think. Let's move on to, again, one of my personal favorite magazines that in your video, you didn't do justice to this fucking magazine. And that pissed me the fuck off.
I forgot what rank I gave it. It's been a year.
So I had to make this video just to shit on you for not giving Manga Erotics F a higher score. All that aside, Manga Erotics F was a bi-monthly magazine that published from 2001 to 2014, and it, strictly speaking, wasn't alternative manga, but it practically was, because it didn't have an intended demographic. The manga published in it were definitely aimed at an older demographic, and that's kind of by virtue of it being often described as artsy sex comics, really, is what many people would describe this magazine as. So it was definitely for an older audience, but it appealed to both men and women, I think. And what I thought was pretty neat about this one is there's actually a pretty historically important mangaka that was on the kind of the supervision board. And that's, of course, Naoki Yamamoto, who is one of my personal favorite mangaka. If we actually run through the library of this magazine, it's not the deepest. I think it's got maybe under 80 manga serialized, but it's got probably some of my favorite mangaka in here, right? So again, Natsuni Ono published Restaurant Paradisico in here. Furuya published a couple. Lychee Light Club, Innocence Boy Shonen. Even Asano has a manga in here, Girl on the Shore. And then even just from other authors that I perhaps don't love as much, but think highly of the work, Utsubora published in here. So it's got and this is how you described it in your video, which I think would be very fair, a lot of manga from my favorite mangaka, but not necessarily their best.
Yeah. Just in my case, I also want to mention Jiro Matsumoto. He had a couple of his manga in here as well, which I think the only of his that has been translated into English officially. It's probably out of print. It probably is. But yeah, it's a magazine that has a lot of really cool stuff. It is a magazine that by its title you can kind of guess that it has a lot of manga with nudity in it, but this is not an hentai magazine. This is, manga with nudity. It's very different. There's a lot more. And if you know Naoki Yamamoto, and I didn't knew he was on the directive board, but I can definitely see his influence in the manga that it's been publishing here, because it does fit on the kind of style that he does, the kind of stories that he does tell. Where a lot of them, honestly, especially the one shots, are kind of almost hentai, but they always like plot first, nudity a close second. That's kind of like what this magazine is. If you're not someone who likes or cares for nudity, especially female nudity in your manga, this is probably a magazine that's not going to appeal to you. But I think even not counting that, I think the stories, it's one of those magazines that is just really interesting to read the stuff that is published in here, because magazines like this tend to allow authors to write stuff that I don't think they would be allowed to write in necessarily other kinds of manga. And you can see that, for example, with Asano and Girl on the Shore, which a lot of people hate Girl on the Shore, and I fully understand why. But again, it is a kind of story that he's not able to write necessarily in a lot of other magazines that he works in,
Yep, absolutely. And like you said, I think it all comes down to like your own personal tolerance for a lot of the content it depicts and talks about. But it's certainly not sex for the sake of sex, right? It's not there just to get you off. It's all a part of a greater narrative. It's much more thoughtful than I think some people would lead on, especially when you talk about A Girl on the Shore. I'm, like you said, totally sympathetic to those who say like the content is just really unsettling to them. It's supposed to be, but again, I understand why that would be a barrier for a lot of people, but I think too many just kind of disregard the manga because of what it depicts and don't really give it the time of day to understand what story Asano is trying to tell. And I think that argument applies to a lot of the mangaka in here. Yamamoto would be another pretty big example, I think. But all that aside, so I was going to just pull this is my video card here and kind of just give it like a high A above Garo. And that's almost entirely on the back of again, the overall vision of the magazine, the kind of principles behind it, the people that were involved in it. Much like Garo, I could open up a random issue of Manga Erotics F and I could probably read it front to back and enjoy everything a lot. So, yeah. Alright, so the next magazine we're going to talk about is semi-monthly Manga Action, which is actually the first true seinen magazine. The first magazine to publish with its target demographic being older men in its entirety. So this, again, started all the way back in 1967 and is still ongoing today. For manga that I've read from it, it's basically, again, some of Oshimi's middling works. Sorry, that's awfully aggressive for me to say. It has Inside Mari, which I would say is in his big three of well-written work. So it has Inside Mari and Drifting Net Cafe, which I personally love. Right, it's kind of like Oshimi's take on, Yume's Drifting Classroom, in a way, which a lot of people hate. I remember reading interviews with Oshimi and him talking about, early in his career, he felt pressures to put a lot of sexual content in his manga and be a little provocative, but he felt like that was kind of disingenuous, which is why you don't see it in the same way that you do now. That aside, that's kind of my sample of the magazine, but when you kind of run through its library, again, this one runs deep, and it's got a lot of kind of historically important manga like Lone Wolf and Cub, Old Boy, Crayon Shin-chan, Lupin the Third, right? So kind of big names in the history of seinen.
Yeah, out of the things that I've personally read, and you did the research for the manga that we didn't read, so all that I know is Old Boy. That's a big one. Not as big as the movie, and I think even a lot of people don't even know that, the Old Boy, the Korean movie, is based on a Japanese manga. Town of Evening Calm, which I think that's not even the full name. It has a huge ass name, but it's a really good manga. It has a sequel, which has a movie adaptation. It's about post-bomb Hiroshima. I think it's in Hiroshima. Oshimamoto Inu and Oshimamoto Zoku are two really short manga. They're also pretty good. They're more recent stuff. Then I've read 17 Sai, which I could go on a big ass rant about, just because it is an interesting manga. Just not sure if good, especially knowing the contents and what it's based on. I'm not going to go into details because we'd get demonetized, and I don't want to anyways, but it was a pretty heavy like murder case in Japan involving minors. That's why it's called 17 Sai. The victim and the murderers were all like around 17, were all minors. And so it's really discussing really well-known crime, and this manga is kind of like adaptation of it, but with a happy ending, which is weird. Like, why would you even do that? I mean, it's not a one-to-one adaptation, but it's so close to the crimes that you cannot read it without associate the manga with it. Anyways, it's weird, but that's kind of like the only dud, and that's a dud based on all the things surrounding the manga, not necessarily the manga itself. Most of what I've read and most of what you mentioned, I think, are good stuff, honestly. I hated Shin-chan as a kid. I can appreciate Shin-chan now just based like on, first of all, what it's trying to say. Once you learn that it's a series aimed towards adults dealing with problematic children, and not exactly how it was advertised in my country, which is for little kids, where I was like, why are you showing us, like, giving us this awful example of a child for us to imitate, which we did.
Yeah, that's the thing. Even my wife, where she grew up, it was also advertised as for children, and so she watched it when she was young, which seems very counterintuitive to what the fuck the manga was actually trying to do.
And my parents hated Shin-chan because of that as well. Why would you show this to kids? And now I was like, oh, it wasn't. That makes so much sense. But yeah, I like this magazine. I don't think I knew much about Manga Action, but it is just based on what I read, based on what you mentioned. It's a really good magazine and apparently very historically important.
So with that said,
I think it deserves a good ranking.
I do too. Do you think it probably ends up somewhere in the B seinen brain rot, right? Like maybe between Big Comic and Morning?
I would honestly put it maybe above Morning.
You know what? I think it should even go above Young Sunday. So moving along, we have a pretty important shonen magazine, Monthly Shounen Ace, which started in 1994. And this, again, to me, just seemed like a edgier battle shonen kind of magazine, right? Like it had Deadman Wonderland and Smoke and Parade, which is by the same two mangaka. It had Future Diary, and the last thing I'd read from it was Welcome to the NHK. So these are series that I quite like, but I think Crash might have a bit more to say about this one.
I've read a couple more. I've read Negative Happy Chainsaw Edge, also by the same mangaka as Welcome to the NHK. And I've read a couple of like adaptations of movies. A Girl Up Through Time, which is an amazing movie, one of my favorites. The manga was fine. Nobody Can Hear Me But You, which I think is a movie adaptation. I haven't watched the movie. I think it's a magazine that it's interesting because, like you said, it feels like the edgiest shonen magazine out there. It's like just Deadman Wonderland, Mirai Nikki, Future Diary, whatever you want to call it. These are like kind of manga that I read on my teens, and I loved them back when I read them. But they're also like kind of manga that I'm not fully sure if I revisit, if I would actually still enjoy them as much. Especially Deadman Wonderland. Especially, I mean, even Mirai Nikki. I don't think I would like it as much.
It's the elfin lead thing all over again, and I think it's perfectly comparable. I think these are just like really edgy, kind of violent and kind of sexual battle shonen, right? It's really pushing that edge between, it's pushing the boundary between what's acceptable for this kind of demographic. And I read it when I was in that transition, like that transitional period as well, where I wanted to see boobs and violence, right? I remember when I watched Mirai Nikki, I was like, this is one of the fucking greatest anime ever. I was in love. But when I made the Doofy account and I was talking or singing my praise about Mirai Nikki, I got clowned the fuck off of Twitter for it. And I'm like, oh shit. And I also had not watched it in a long time. So It eventually just kind of faded from my mind, so it sort of just kind of naturally fell down the ranks, but I don't remember anything bad about it immediately, you know what I mean?
I mean, I remember automatically the ending was pretty shit.
Okay. I mean, listen, that's a whole other conversation, which we won't be having right now, but...
I remember being pretty mad at the ending. But, you know, yeah. It is those kind of manga that they're really made for a specific age that will eat them up. And I think it just so happens that that's the age where anime is the most popular, like the main demographic, or it's kind of like the late teens. And yeah, but, you know, I was looking at the list and... I don't know, like, okay, we have Deadman Wonderland and Mirai Nikki, but everything else, I just remember, like, Welcome to NHK, The Girl After Time, Nobody Can Hear Me But You. All these are adaptations. Welcome to NHK is a novel adaptation. Negative Happy, Chainsaw Edge, I think, is also a novel adaptation. So it's kind of like, besides Deadman Wonderland and Mirai Nikki, what does this thing have that it's actually original?
That's actually a good point, because, like, the Fate Stay Night was one of the most popular manga that came out its magazine, and that was an adaptation of the visual novel.
Well, then there you go. It seems like a magazine is very focused on adaptations of popular things, you know?
Now, it does have, and I think maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but it has Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, which... Did that start as an anime?
That was a novel first, so it's still an adaptation.
Oh my god, they're not beating the adaptation allegations. Holy shit. It's currently serializing Nichijou.
There's Billy Nichijou's. The gag, you know, yeah. No, I think that's a manga original.
Okay, there you go. This conversation's changed my mind a lot, because I was ready to come in here and give it like a kind of generous score, but the more I kind of explore its back catalog, the more we talk about what it's doing, and the more we talk about, you know, what probably influenced me to think highly of the couple series I like from it, I think I was a little charitable.
I don't know, I kind of want to give it maybe a C, because I think even those adaptations are like adaptations of big things, or adaptations where, you know, in some cases the manga is indeed popular. You know, Welcome to NHK, the manga is, you know, well known. But yeah, I don't think it's as bad as any of the ones we put on D.
Probably worse than Gangan, right?
Yeah, thinking, like, comparing those two, I'll put it below, yeah.
Like, literally just Soul Eater and FMA Mog anything in this fucking magazine, so...
Exactly.
Very well. Moving along, we have our last shonen magazine for this video, Monthly Dragon Age, which is, to my knowledge, a ongoing magazine that started its publication in 2003. However, I've only read High School of the Dead, so like my previous comments about apparently every fucking shonen magazine, it's just a edgier shonen magazine. So, okay, I have to stop saying that, because I'm starting to think that, like, my standard of a shonen magazine is Weekly Shonen Jump, which is fair, but I think Weekly Shonen Jump is considerably more tame than almost every other shonen magazine, to be fair. And that's why it's such a commercial success.
Yeah, it definitely aims, like, it's a magazine that elementary kids can grab and read. And you can see that in even recently manga like Mi and Roboko, where it's about, you know, elementary, you know, students reading Shonen Jump. Whereas a lot of the other, or at least a lot of shonen magazines aim a bit higher, even like Shonen Jump Plus, for example. That said, I would consider Dragon Age, just based on the three stuff that I read from it, kind of the edgiest. I'm not sure if edgier than Shounen Ace, but surely close to it. It's like just having High School of the Dead, that should count for something.
I think this is the horniest shonen magazine, like, objectively.
Things that I've read from it, other than High School of the Dead, was Variante. This horror manga, it kind of felt to me like something that you would find, like, kind of like a Mirai Nikki, kind of like a Deadman Wonderland, a little bit shorter. But along those lines, it's been a while ago. I don't fully remember it. And I read Karin, or Chibi Vampire, which is a interesting manga. It's more of a rom-com. It's not... I wouldn't even call it, you know, orny or edgy. It's just kind of like this normal rom-com with a vampire. It has probably the worst placed balloons I've ever seen in a manga, which is a weird thing to complain about, but there were a lot of times I was reading the manga, I didn't know what to read first, and that is a unique experience. But honestly, I don't have much more to say.
I looked a little deeper into their library for both of us, and if I needed the evidence to support my horny allegations, it's also got fucking High School DxD. Okay. Makenki, other famously horny series. Full Metal Panic ran in here, which I've never read, so I can't assess the horniness level, but I know it's got a bit of a following.
Yeah, I think it was popular back when we started reading manga. I remember it being recommended. I think I read like one chapter or two.
And then for ongoing series, and these are kind of my final supporting pieces, it's got Triage X and Trinity 7, which are both violently horny manga.
I don't know them, but I'll trust you.
With all that said, I just don't think it's a good magazine.
You know, when I read High School to that first, I read it before I knew it was an ecchi series, before it got the anime adaptation. So I went into it expecting like a horror, like a genuine horror manga, and I think it was the worst disappointment of my entire life. And then I reread it recently, knowing what it was, hoping like now that I know what to expect, it's better. And it is slightly better, in the sense that I wasn't disappointed. I was just not interested. The other stuff that I read from it, it's okay.
I'm gonna just make the judgment call D under Monthly Shonen Jump.
All right.
Its biggest crime is being horny. You know, it doesn't have like the most atrocious manga of all time, all things considered, but it is, I think an average manga from this magazine is a cut below average, so we have to kind of treat it as such.
Yeah. It's funny they were like, oh, it's Orny D, and then we put Manga Erotics F on A.
Yeah, listen, I'll deal with those commenters when they come. Moving along, we have monthly comic Birz, which is no longer serializing, but it's a seinen magazine that debuted in 1986 and stopped publication in 2018. And the only thing I wanted to mention about this was that it used to be called Comic Burger, and I think it's pretty fucked up that they would change the name to Comic Birz when Comic Burger is such a fucking based name.
I hate the name Comic Birz because I never know how to pronounce that.
It doesn't come off the tongue nicely at all.
So have you read anything from it, or you just
you
throw it in here for me? Oh, you definitely read one.
We both read one. Music of Marie.
Yeah.
I wrote a lovely little piece on in my top 50 anime and manga of all time video that you should all check out.
Yeah, I've seen that part in specific.
I'd hope you've seen the whole fucking thing in specific.
Not yet.
Fake friend! Fake friend! Fake friend! Call the police!
Like you've seen all my videos.
Okay, good point.
Yeah, other than that, the rest of the two things that I've read, I think I was discussing this with another friend the other day. Lemon of the Lamb, which is by... She's popular mangaka. Lemon of the Lamb is her most popular manga, and probably one of the most popular manga in Comic Birz, I'm gonna guess. That is an annotation, at least. This is probably gonna piss off a couple of people, but I just find it extremely boring. Like, not bad, just one of those where it's just tough to read. It's tough one to just continue, where I could just be reading other stuff.
I've always called it like the Hunter x Hunter syndrome, where like I can see everything that's happening and I can respect it, but it's just like not doing anything for me. So it's not so much like a criticism of the series, more so, I guess a comment about my taste.
That's fair. And I also read Tokyo Akazuki, or Tokyo Redwood, which I'm just gonna tell you, do not read that.
See, the worst thing that you could do is tell me not to read something, because I will almost always continue to read it.
Oh, I'm not telling you. I'm telling the viewers.
Okay.
And I'm telling you exactly why. It's a loli Hiroguro.
Oh,
and
never mind.
It's kind of popular, so that's why I read it. But I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why it is. Honestly. Yeah, man, it has like this edgy, funny, haha, Redwood parody style story, but
I mean, I kind of feel that way about Erogero in general. Like, I can maybe read one a year, and be like, all right, I read my quota for the year. But after a while, like, it all just starts to blend together, like, other than maybe like Kago's works.
And I'm gonna say this on my next video, so this is a preview. I think one of the interesting things about Eroguro is that it uses, because it talks about taboos, it allows the mangaka to tell stories and to run concepts and premises that normally you won't see in other kinds of manga. They're always like batshit insane, and it's kind of fun, especially with like Shintaro Kago to see just how far, you know, some of these mangaka can go with some of their ideas. The execution normally is not the best, and in the case of like Tokyo Akazukin, it feels like the plot of the story is just like normal seinen anyways. So putting it like lolly gore is not gonna make me think it's better, you know? That were the three that I read for comic Birz.
It did have, at least, and I don't know if it's serialized in completion here, but Hitalia, I think, was in this magazine at one point. But the other one that I wanted to mention is Birth, or Arm of Canaan, which has like a pretty strong cult following. This is kind of like a horror manga that I've wanted to read for a long time, but like trying to find scans is difficult. It's violently out of press in English. This is one that I'm genuinely interested. I think I might love, but again, that doesn't really help comic Birz here. Now, I do love Musical Marie. It's in my top 50, but like, I just don't understand the magazine enough to place it anywhere confidently, so...
Well, me neither. Because it is like, I look at the three manga that I read, it's like, one of them is like this manga that I really enjoy and really liked, which is Musical Marie, and then we had Lament of the Lamb, which is a manga that I'm not that keen on, but it's a manga that is popular. It's a manga that has a cult following. It's a manga that has this, you know, there's a lot of people think it's a really great manga, and then there's Tokyo Redwood, which is absolute shit, and it's just like, where do I grab these three and put it on a single ranking?
I'm gonna tentatively say it's D, and I think the question is, do we think it's better or worse than Monthly Dragon Age?
Yeah, maybe above it. I think maybe above it, honestly.
Yeah, there we go. Next up, we have Monthly Young Animal, a very popular seinen magazine which debuted in 1992, most popular for serializing Berserk.
Which didn't even start it there.
Oh, really?
Berserk did change magazines, because I think the first arc is in one magazine, and then starting from the Golden Age, I think that's when it started like in Animal. And that's why the Berserk numbers are all over the place, because chapter 1 of like the genuine like chapter 1 and then the first chapter of Animal both are named chapter 1, so it just fucked up with the rankings. And so if you have the volumes you look up, they don't actually have any numbering in it. They just gave up on that.
But it's not just Berserk. It's March Comes in Like a Lion is still ongoing, and that's again fairly highly regarded. Futari Ecchi, again, pretty highly regarded, I think, Ecchi series. And then like a pretty okay back catalog, you know, it's got Holy Land, which is massive.
Yeah, I haven't read a lot of it. The first two that I've read were actually like Berserk and Blaster Knuckle. It's a clone. You know, back in the 90s, every single, you know, first-person video game was just a Doom clone. Blaster Knuckle is that with Berserk. It's just Berserk with a different skin. It is Berserk, but with Black Eye killing members of the KKK clan in the 90s. It's pretty rad, and there's very few manga out there, I think, that actually tackle topics of racism like this. It's interesting, but again, it is, you're reading this and like, oh, it's just, the guy just wanted to read Berserk, just wanted to write Berserk. And I've read Honeymoon Salad, which I don't remember much about. I remember liking it. It's kind of like this ecchi, I don't think it's ecchi, it's like this seinen love triangle that I think has a sequel that is, or a prequel that is actually more popular than Honeymoon Salad, but Baby Leaf. To me, Young Animal was always kind of like the Berserk magazine, you know. I think for a lot of people that's kind of what it is. You didn't mention, I think March Comes Alive is kind of like the other one, where it genuinely can stand on its own, but I also think that's kind of like not necessarily the fault of the magazine, but also kind of like the fault of Berserk, because it's Berserk, man. It's just so huge.
It's like if there was a magazine that published One Piece and a bunch of other like shitty shonen, you know?
It's like if Gangan only published like Full Metal and Soul Eater.
Yeah, basically. So with all that said, it kind of just feels like Ultra Jump is kind of being carried by two series that, you know, are good.
To be fair, that is higher than Ultra Jump, which is just essentially being carried by JoJo.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's basically Ultra Jump, but like these series are better than JoJo's. So, all right, that's Young Animal. Moving along, we have Monthly Young King Hours, another seinen magazine that debuted 1 year after Young Animal. This one, of course, being in 1993, and it's a pretty like okay magazine. The one manga I've read from it is Hellsing, though I know the mangaka also wrote Drifters, which is currently ongoing in this magazine. And it's got some pretty important manga historically. It's got Trigun Maximum, which is obviously like a pretty important manga historically. Spirit Circle, which I know a lot of people love. And a manga that I almost own in its entirety, but haven't. That's a lie. I've read one volume. I couldn't get into it. Excel Saga.
Yeah, I've watched the anime of Excel Saga. I've the first episode because a friend of mine said, "You like FLCL, you're gonna like this," and it just was a bit too much.
I understand where that comparison came from, but it feels very superficial. Like it feels like you're just attaching to like the craziness of Fooly Cooly without like the method behind it, and you're saying, "Oh, these two things are like crazy and spontaneous. You'll like them both," but no. Though for what it's worth, the XL Saga anime is like dramatically different than the manga, and that's kind of by design. I think the idea was XL Saga was supposed to be kind of experimental. It was supposed to really deviate from the manga, and that's with the mangaka's permission, I believe. So I think there are actually a lot of people that prefer the anime for that reason. That, and it has all these extra aids from, you know, the kind of spontaneous visuals and the kind of crazy voice acting and what have yous. But again, this is kind of speculative remarks. It doesn't actually help me better evaluate this magazine.
The two things I read was Elsing, and I read Spur Circle, which, as you said, a lot of people like it. I'm one of those people. It's really good. I was strict because everyone says that this author does like the best shonen, and so you read it and then you go look for it, and everything is actually seinen. So people are liars, but he's good. Like, and Spirit Circle is, in my opinion, his best work out of the things that I've read. But I also am biased because I love like time traveling shenanigans, and this is kind of hit. Those two, like, I like them, and I know Young King is kind of like a big magazine line. We're only ranking this one, but there's a couple of like Young King magazines, and a lot of them have like other popular stuff, but it is kind of like this magazine that does publish like or magazine line, should I say, does publish a lot of like cult hits, and it's one that I would enjoy reading more stuff from. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
So in light of this discussion, what are we feeling?
I see bottom of B, I don't know, or
better or worse than Square? I feel like Square's better.
Better than EX though? I mean, the manga that we like from it, or the manga that I read from it, I kind of like more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's good, I think. Next we have Monthly Comic Bunch, a seinen magazine that serialized from 2001 to 2024, a very recent departure. And one thing I thought was kind of cool about this manga was that it was actually founded by a bunch of former Jump editors and authors back in 2000. The reason for their kind of end of publication was they just kind of moved online. It wasn't really a failure, it just kind of changed medium, right? Now, in terms of actual manga, again, this is kind of a more shallow pool, all things considered, but it's got some bangers. One of the big ones is Our Happy Time.
So for those that are like old heads from Mall back in like 2009, 2010, Our Happy Hours was kind of like this weird outlier manga that jumped into like the top 10. And I think that's kind of like how it got first popularized like in the West. because just like this kind of random manga being ranked among titles like, like Berserk, like One Piece, and a lot of people just started reading it because of that. I remember that's why I read it.
I read it kind of on the back of finishing 3 Days of Happiness. I found the two to be pretty similar.
I can see both of them, why you think they're similar. Story-wise, team-wise, they tackle similar things like mortality and
in very different ways, albeit. But other important manga that I've read here is a couple manga by Furuya. Most importantly, his adaptation of No Longer Human ran in here, and if you've watched my top 50 video, you'll know this is, my top 3 favorite manga of all time. So obviously extra points awarded here, but it also has another one of his longer series, 51 Ways to Save Her, which is a really fun, as fun as a Furuya manga could be, I suppose, manga.
It's one of his most normal manga, I think, from the ones I've read. And I think this one was actually the first Furuya manga that I read. So at the time, I didn't thought it was, as out there as I learned later.
Yeah, definitely.
I've read My Girl, which is by the same mangaka as Or Happiest Hours. I also remember liking it. And I read Zeno no Noa, which is this really bad, like, shonen-esque kind of manga. I mean, characters I hate because there's the light clones. I hate when I'm reading like a trashy horror manga, like a bad manga, and they have like a light clone. I just hate them so much. They come off very annoying. But that's what I've read. I know that Comic Bunch has a bunch, pun not intended, has a bunch of Shonen Jump sequels. Fist of the North Star sequel or prequel, I forgot which. City Hunter spin-off as well, because these were the 3 mangaka that moved from Jump to form Comic Bunch. So all of them, started these series related to their hits back in Jump. I'm not sure if to, bring people there for the first time. Like, you'd look at a cover and it's like, it's Kenshiro, I'm gonna buy this,
And I mean, also it had New Violence Jack by Go Nagai, which was one of his bigger series as well. So it had the sequel to that. I think it had Batum as well. So this is actually this is a bigger magazine than I think I was originally willing to give it credit for.
No, it's definitely one of the most interesting, especially having in mind the names, that started it. I don't think it's very often that a magazine can start and have, right away the mangaka behind Fist of the North Star and the mangaka behind, like, Saint Seiya working on it. So I think that works for its advantage right from the get-go. And it just has, like, a solid build of titles as time went on.
Yep, so I'm feeling very optimistic about this magazine. Maybe a mid B? Yeah, amidst the shonen brain rot. Or the seinen brain rot. Maybe not as good as Morning, but better than Big Comic.
Yeah. Then you have a D.
Yeah, Comic Days, an online service that started in 2018, and it's got... Actually, this brings us back to a conversation we've already had, but it has manga by Masatoshi Nakayama, right? PTSD Radio, Denjin N, and we have already had our discussion about him. I like these works. PTSD Radio is definitely his magnum opus, and I guess here I'll include the little bit of lore behind it for the sake of filling out this discussion. But he actually stopped writing manga totally while he was writing PTSD Radio because he started to experience supernatural things as he wrote it that were eerily similar to what he was writing about. So that scared the fuck out of him, and he decided to stop writing manga for that reason.
That is interesting. I didn't know that. I know that the manga was on hiatus, but
oh yeah,
I didn't know the reason.
Yeah, indefinitely. He just got scared shitless. I read this through I might have read this through Comic Days or an English version of it, but I did have to pay to read it online. And at the end of the volumes, he has these kind of autobiographical sections where he talks about the crazy shit that's happening in his life as he's writing this, and then suddenly he just stops. I think the third volume or the last volume is half full of just these what's been going on in my life. I'm fucking scared.
Okay, that makes me more interested in reading it.
Okay, there we go. We've got him, ladies and gentlemen. The only other magazine I've read from manga I've read from this magazine is Noraku no Futari, which is, it kind of has that same essence as like Flowers of Evil, you know, manipulative girl and kind of submissive boy. It's got that dynamic. It did get canceled, I believe, so the ending's like super rushed, kind of shitty, but on the whole I really liked it, and it was a real contender for my top 50 for a long time. But yeah, I like everything I've read from this. I know it also has My Dear Self with Malice Afterthought, which people love, but you know, never read it myself.
I've only read one manga from this magazine, and it's the most random one. So the normal title apparently is Yuruto Under Wantan-chan, but the English official title is Wang Tang Chang. Wang Tang Chang Yuruto Under.
Okay, turn up. I'm interested.
So it's kind of like this really short, like battle shonen-esque, where the main character plays, you know, those crane games. I read it because I'm in a Discord server where they do like these, you know, manga reads, and they just ask us like pick a random manga, and the fun thing is that everyone picks like random shit. So this was one of them, and I used to read them all, but occasionally nowadays it's harder. But I really like the art style of this mangaka. Just, it's bubbly, it's colorful, it's really pretty. So I was like, I'm gonna give it a shot, and it's 1 volume long, so whatever. But it's fun. I think it's one of those where you just read it and you enjoy it for like the time being, and then you don't remember it until you have to make a video of this. But yeah, so I don't have much to say about this magazine.
Yeah, it just seems like whatever. I feel like if we gave Sunday GX a C, like, well, I don't know. I feel like Sunday GX kind of got into C on the basis of like, you know, it's where Asano got a start. Like, it had some okay manga and it has a bit of history at least. This one's really new. Doesn't have a massive backlog, and while I enjoy what I've read from it, I don't know, like low C, high D maybe. But do you think higher or lower than GX?
You know, maybe lower.
Mm-hmm.
The D magazine should also be on D.
Only checks out
Just below Animal.
Yeah. Okay. ComicWalker is our next magazine service, and I don't know anything about it. I've not read anything from it. I don't really recognize a lot of its catalog, and I don't know what the fuck's ongoing in it. I don't even know when it started. Okay, this one's a complete mystery to me, but I saw you talk about it in your video, so...
So ComicWalker is not necessarily really a magazine per se. It's like a service where you can buy manga, and you can, as far as I'm aware, you can buy pretty much kinda any kind of manga. It's kind of like a Kindle, you know, or a Comic X or whatever it's called. But apparently, it also has like unique manga in there. So that this is kind of like what it is. It's not necessarily a traditional magazine, but there's some comics, some manga that are unique to ComicWalker. I do not remember mentioning this one on my video. So the only thing I read from ComicWalker was a really bad manga called Isekai Gomon Hime. Or I think this one is it's called Princess Tortushin. It's the popular title. And it's kind of like this isekai. I think the novel and the anime are better than the manga. But it's one of those, it's really edgy, it's really stupid. I did not like it. However, it's kind of hard to judge ComicWalker, I'm going to be honest, because, you know, it's like judging Amazon. As a whole, it's like judging Amazon. But then, I don't know, like, what else does it have that is, like, exclusive to it?
Wow. So why the fuck did you put it in your original video, damn it? It's the only reason I put it in here.
Do I have it on my original video? Because I don't have it on my list.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't have it.
Interesting. So what the fuck do we do with it?
Well, we can put it on F. And pretend it does not exist.
Yeah, let's just stick it in F and hope no one notices or asks. We're in the final stretch now. We have Fellows magazine, which renamed itself to Harta, which is a seinen magazine that started in 2008. And a little fun fact about this one, because you know me, I love a good fun fact. Each cover has a unique piece of art that was drawn by artists in the magazine. So every cover isn't just like a repurposed promotional piece from a manga. It's a unique cover, which if you kind of flip through any of the covers, like they're very beautiful. So I'm glad they do that. But in terms of manga that's been published, I read one volume of Hinamatsuri, and that was fun, but nothing to write home about.
I've read a couple more stuff, and I'm gonna say everything that I read from it, I liked. From the Seal Tools is this really, I was gonna say obscure manga because I don't think anyone else has read it. It's short, it's fun. Ren and the Grey World is one of the most beautiful manga I've ever read in my entire life. And if you haven't read it, I recommend checking it out. I'm Sakamoto is just... It's probably, I think, one of the most popular manga in the magazine. I'm just gonna assuming. The mangaka actually passed away recently, if I'm not wrong. But it's a really good manga. It's a fun one. It's about this guy called Sakamoto who... everyone, like he's perfect at everything and everyone's just trying to make him fail at stuff. But he never does. And everyone just falls in love with him at the end of each chapter. It's so stupid, but it's fun. And On My Sweet Alien, which I have the physicals, is also like this really cute, in the style of like rom-com where it's about a guy, he's dating a woman, beautiful woman, but the woman is an alien, and oh my god, what if people find out? They're all like cute, fun stuff. And it just, I think that's what this magazine is.
And there's one major title that you missed that I believe you've read, Dungeon Meshi.
Oh, yeah, I probably forgot to put it on my item list. I read Dungeon Meshi earlier this year, and I think I finished in like this January, and I said it's one of the best manga I'm going to read the entire year. And we're on the end of October right now, and that is still true. It is still one of the best manga I've read this year. It's honestly just amazing. A lot of people are, talking about it. It's one of the most popular manga, one of the most popular anime of the last like 2 years, I would say. And there's a really good reason for it. I don't want to spoil it because the second half of Licious in Dungeon Meshi, is when it goes like absolutely insane level of quality. But with Dungeon Meshi, to me, that just pushes this magazine. If I'm going to rank it myself, I would put it on an A. I think it has a lot of really good stuff.
Wow. Then A it's going. And where in A would you put it, my good friend?
Maybe between IKKI and Young Magazine, that's what I'd put it.
Okay. I respect it. Moving along, we have our second last manga magazine, Weekly Manga Goraku, a seinen magazine from 1968. That, I'll keep this brief, has some hentai, has some erotica, and maybe on the more tame side of things, it has bota bota, which has been translated, I think, into drip drip by the mangaka behind Beastars, which is a fun little manga, but the others I've read from it are kind of shite. I know it does have some manga by Go Nagai, but I mean, at this point, Go Nagai's been everywhere, so I don't know if that really even works in your favor anymore. It does, though, have Weed by Yoshihiro Takahashi, who, was a pretty big Jump author for a long time, right? Behind Ginga.
I've only read Bota Bota. It's a fun manga. I think the mangaka really shows, like Paru Itagaki, really shows that she can be as insane as her father in this one, but not knowing anything else. I don't know. I'm gonna let you decide.
Yeah, this is feeling like a D-ish manga, probably. Probably put it like at the bottom there, to be honest. I probably like Manga Magazine Z more.
Yeah, I can see that.
And our last magazine is Mobile Man, which is another kind of digital service The dates I'm not 100% clear on, but this had actually a lot of really cool manga. Most notably for me, Nozokiana, the hentai that made Giga cry. You know what I mean? A really brilliant manga. You know, it borders on hentai. A lot of people probably write it off as just hentai, but it's definitely, to me, pretty obviously more story-driven. It's just story-driven drama with good sex. But beyond that, like, it has Drowning Fireworks, which was by, I think, one of the earlier works by the Boys Abyss mangaka. And I actually had, like, a pretty long review started for Drowning Fireworks. I think there's a lot of cool things happening in it that don't get fleshed out perfectly, but you could see the kind of genius in what's going on there. And I also kind of went on a bit of a Mobile Man spree for a while. I kind of wanted to see what else the service had to offer. The highlights are probably Invisible Man Pact, which is another manipulative girl, submissive male sort of story. It's a little half-baked, I think, but it's still overall pretty fun. And then there's Nanako-san, which has a bunch of these kind of short stories about Nanako doing regular things and the mangaka sexualizing the fuck out of her. So it's kind of not good, but it got like fucking 4 or 5 different series, so it's...
Yeah, I mean, sometimes... What is the one? I think Sky High has like 10 or like 7 spin-offs, sequels, and I'm like, why? Who's still reading Sky High? You know, sometimes it is what it is. The only thing I've read from it was Nozokiana, which I really like. I think I read it 1.5 times because my second time I don't think I actually finished it. It's a really good one. You know, yeah, it is kind of hentai. I think I first found it on an hentai website. But it also, like you said, it is a manga that I think the main point and the most interesting part of it is the story, especially if you're someone who likes, you know, Tsundere, Flowers of Evil, you know, that those kinds of manga. I think you're gonna enjoy Nozokiana. Mysterious Girlfriend X, also, you know. But having only read that one, I'm gonna have to let you decide the final ranking of this one.
Yeah.
It seems like you really like it.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive on it. It's got a coherent vision too, which I appreciate, but...
Very rare for online, you know, online services. They don't tend to have, like, that focus.
Yeah, they tend to be more eclectic, but this one definitely has a narrow focus. But all that said, Nozokiana is fantastic, but nothing else kind of gets to that level. I'm gonna put it maybe just below Young Animal and above Days.
Yeah.
But that does it for our magazine manga tier list. It was a long, grueling session, but we did it, damn it.
Let's go. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Thank you all for watching. Thank you to those who, you know, just skimmed around for the magazines they're interested in. Thank you to those who kind of played this in the background as they did other things. And thank you to anyone that left a comment. I certainly encourage you all to do so. I would also encourage you all to go check out Manga Crash, who has been essential here in helping flesh out my opinions on these different magazines, so that together we could try and achieve something greater than the two of us individually. And I think we've done that here. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining me. It was a pleasure as always.
It was fun.